Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the strategic planning meeting here at County Hall on Tuesday, the 2nd of November. As usual, just to reacquaint you with the planning procedure we go through at committee. As chair, I normally introduce the application, then we have some site visit videos. We then ask the planning officer to speak to the application, give us any updates, changes to recommendations, and then present their report. We then have a public speaking slot, 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for local members, parish councillors, and 5 minutes for the applicant or supporter. The members of the committee then have the opportunity to ask questions to our planning officers, and then after those questions we enter into debate. We ask for a proposal, someone to second it, and then we debate the item and then take a vote. Leslie, can I ask, are there any apologies for absence today?
I've received apologies from Councillors Runner Thompson and Councillor Foster.
Thank you very much indeed. Minutes of the previous meeting. I'd just like to thank my Vice Chairman, Malcolm Robinson, for stepping in the breach when I had to go to Manchester to do things political about a month ago. But thank you very much indeed, sir. And these are obviously the minutes of your meeting. Are the members happy that these are a true and correct record of that meeting? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Disclosures of members' interests. Any members got any interest in any items they wish to disclose today? No? No. Determination of planning applications. Before we go into that, I just wanted to thank our planning consultant, Gordon Halliday, and our planning team for the effort and work they put into the site visits that we conducted yesterday. Again, you know, I wish we could go and visit the site for every planning application. You know, it gives you a so much better feel of the application. Desktop exercises, all very well and good, but there's nothing like getting out in the field and seeing how the planning application fits into the local environment. Both site visits to Bedlington and to Seaton Delaval were very good indeed, and I just want to thank the members for their local input and information, which again I'm sure is feeding its way into our decision-making process. So, determination of planning applications. Our first application today is construction of 18 starter units, Factory D at Ennerdale Road, Riverside Business Park in Blythe. And I think Judith is going to speak to this one. Judith, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of updates to notify you of before we begin the presentation. And that is, it's just a typo in that first introduction that says the application. Oh, is that better? Yeah? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Yes, in the introduction on your report, it does refer you to the Castle Morpeth Area Committee, and it's actually Strategic Planning Committee. And also in condition number 12 of that report, it refers to condition 9, and it should refer to condition 11. So that's within condition 12, it refers to another condition, and it's listed as number 9, and it should be number 11. So they're the only updates. I'll move on to the presentation, which is for the construction of the 18 starter units at Ennerdale Road at Riverside Business Park. So this is the site, hatched in red. I can see just around here. Oh, sorry, what's going on here? This is the an aerial view Sorry, I'll just get this technology to work. Try that again. Right. Sorry about this. Right, so we've got a satellite image now which shows the site where the arrow is pointing to, just here in green. And this is the proposed site plan. You'll see from this that there is going to be a new access proposed into the site. This is the building here. There will be a number of parking bays along the front and some loading bays as well. There will be some wider loading bays to the rear of the building, and it means each one unit will have a loading bay of its own. The use class for the buildings is what was formerly known as B2 and B8, which is storage industrial office space. It's now under the use class E, category E, which is the same thing. There is going to be a new landscaping plan, which I'll come on to in a moment. Yeah, so this is the landscaping plan. There will be a loss of trees due to the new access point, but that is mitigated through more planting around the site than what is there at the moment. So these are the elevations of the units. And again, this is another proposed access plan. It's just to really put it in a slightly different context. So if you can visualise that from down here, really, where the cursor is where you would come off Coupon Road and drive up this road here along Coniston, and this is where the new access will be. Now, we've had a lot of concerns with regards to this proposal in respect of a fatal accident that was just in this vicinity here 2 years ago. And because of that, we've gone more or less over and above what we would normally require for a proposal like this in terms of what's been submitted to ensure that the access and highway arrangements would be safe and secure. And a road safety audit stage 1 has also been submitted, and our Highways Authority are happy with that. That wouldn't normally happen until after permission had been granted. So kind of ahead of the game on this one, just simply because of the concerns that were around the introduction of a new access, given that, you know, we had this fatality 2 years ago. So this is some photographs of the site. As you can see, and I said just before there, the landscaping is a little bit sparse at the moment, so there is the plan to enhance that. This is the site here, with the existing units to the east there. Sorry, no, to the west. And again, this is looking along Coniston Road, so that is the site on the left-hand side there. And this was taken from the northwest facing south. So the site is on the right-hand side there, so the new access would sit around this area here. And again, this is the access point facing north, and it was in that area there where the accident was 2 years ago. So again, just some final pictures there. So this is the site that will sit just behind that fence there. And again, this is the existing junction, which is just taken sort of standing at that point there, looking this way. And that is it there. And you'll see some sort of soft toys and the likes attached to that fence there, which again is just shows where the accident was 2 years ago. And from a planning perspective, it's a great opportunity for 18 storage units to bring something to the Riverside Park and Blythe for that. In other planning terms, there aren't any objections to this. And as I say, Highways have looked at this in the greatest of detail, and they don't have any concern. We do have Chris Mead with us, our Highways Development Manager, if anybody has any questions that they want some more specific and detailed answers around the highways on that. But otherwise, the application presents no other issues from a planning perspective, and it's recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the slot for public speaking. We've got nobody objecting to this application or no local input from parish town councillors or elected members, but we do have a supporter. Alex Franklin, sir, would you like to speak for no longer than 5 minutes in support of the application?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. My name is Alex Franklin, a planner at Headley Planning Services. We welcome the recommendation of the officer following an extension of period of negotiation and additional assessments. At every stage, the applicant has worked closely with the council to deliver 18 high-quality business units within a sustainable industrial location. The scheme will create an additional 1,600 square metres of floor space at Riverside Business Park and an estimated 92 jobs for local people as a result of construction and operational development. As evidenced within our documents and the officer's report, the proposed development makes effective use of previously developed land within an established business park, which is currently a large area of unused land. The proposed site benefits from existing infrastructure within the business park and grants suitable access to the shops and services which Blythe Town Centre has to offer. The principle of constructing 18 high-quality business units is acceptable within allocated industrial estates. And policies within the emerging Northumberland local plan also support proposals for economic growth, especially in main towns such as Blythe. The proposal is therefore development plan policy compliant. As the principle of development is considered acceptable, other material considerations such as design and highways have been assessed. The proposed units use matching building materials to that of the adjacent units within the business park to integrate it within its surroundings. The design, scale and landscaping of each unit is considered appropriate for its end commercial use. As members will be aware, there have been public comments with regard to highway safety, in particular the internal road network within Riverside Business Park. The proposal creates a new site entrance off Coniston Road along the eastern edge of the proposed site. Detailed consideration has been given towards the design of and functional highways access, which is safe for all road users within the proposed site and surrounding road network. The applicant has worked in cooperation with the council to evidence these measures within the transport statement submitted in support of this application. In addition to the transport statement, an additional assessment was undertaken to determine the safety of the access point to the adjacent road network. The road safety audit was undertaken between a number of highway professionals within the council and on behalf of the applicant and was assessed by an independent party. The detailed plans and assessments conclude that a safe and suitable site access has been achieved off Coniston Road, which will not adversely impact the adjacent road network. A conclusion shared and welcomed by Northumberland County Council Highways Development Manager. Previous comments with regard to highway safety have therefore been resolved following collaboration between the applicant and Council Highways team. To conclude, this application delivers 18 high-quality business units on previously developed yet underutilised land. Completed and operational development will deliver approximately 92 jobs within Blythe and sustain existing shops and services within the local area. The principle of development has been evidenced to be acceptable, and the application is fully policy compliant with regard to the development plan and the emerging Northumberland local plan. Detailed plans and assessments submitted in support of this application conclude that operational development will be well integrated into the surrounding setting of the business park. The internal highway network is considered safe and suitable by a number of planning and highway professionals. We welcome the recommendation by the planning officer and respectfully request that members endorse the officer's recommendation and grant planning approval today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Members of the committee, it's now your opportunity to ask questions to our planning officers. Anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Gordon, Stewart, then Malcolm. Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. It's really for the Highways team. Local concerns been raised. Can you assure us that you have got the best result possible out of this?
Chair, could I?
Yes, certainly.
Could I come in here? I'll give you an overview, and if you require any more technical detail, ask Chris Mead to come in here. It's probably worth me explaining the order that we did things in here. Okay. As it says in the report, this site isn't a complex question in terms of it's an allocated site for business use. Okay. There were, however, some very clearly put and articulated concerns from the local community about highway safety. And there had recently been an unfortunate incident on the highway network near to the site. So what we do normally is once we've granted planning permission, before the highway works are finally agreed and designed, there's a process called a road safety audit, which goes through several stages, which looks at fine-tuning the design to make sure it is safe. We took the highly unusual step here of actually doing the road safety audit before we decided to recommend approval for this scheme. So it's been looked at from a road safety perspective by a separate team who do all the road safety audits in the county normally, and they've concluded that the proposed highway response is acceptable. So we will not be doing this on all schemes, just that there was very much a clearly articulated concern about highway safety here. What's resulted from that has been some minor tweaks and amendments to the highway solution, but fundamentally the conclusion is that it's safe as now suggested in the report. But I'll let Chris come in and just talk about any precise technical matters he'd like to raise.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, there is a history in this location which has resulted in us putting the applicant probably through a greater level of scrutiny than perhaps they needed to, because it wasn't necessarily that the accident related to access into any of the development sites along that section. But what they have demonstrated is that they have what we would consider to be a safe and suitable level of visibility on a road layout which is a 30-mile-an-hour road system. So in terms of being able to use that access that they've proposed, it meets the technical specifications to be deemed as relatively safe from a technical perspective. And then we've also had the independent advisor who's put their marker on it and said, I don't find anything which I would consider to be inherently unsafe about this design. Just to note, for those who know the industrial park well, there are a lot of accesses down that section, and some of them are much closer to the bends than this one is proposed to be, and they don't have a history of accidents in relation to those either. So in weighing up whether or not a safe and suitable access was there, I also judged it against the existing accesses which are in occurrence there, which don't result in harm.
Thank you, Chair. It's a couple of questions. Am I right in thinking these are workshop units rather than office-type development?
Chair, it can be either of those. The use class is storage units, industrial office space, so it can be any of those.
The illustration looks to be workshop units, that's all. Is that just for illustration purposes only?
No, that's the plan that was
The
submitted
proposed
as
plans certainly look to be workshop units to me.
Yeah, I mean, the use class covers all of those uses, but it could be all storage, it could be all office, you know, it just depends
That's
who
fine.
who moves in there and what their business is.
Yeah. My other question is about the road, and I'm struck by the fact that it's an existing road. This accident that happened before this development took place. I presume all the investigations and everything went into that road when we allowed the rest of the stuff further along the road to be built. Is that correct?
I'll give the best timeline I can. I wasn't here when the accident actually occurred, but it was approximately 2 years ago. However, it's not necessarily the case that was what the approach we took here. The approach we took here was to look at the objections which were raised, and the planning officer considered those and put them back to my team and said, do these have any significance given what has happened here with the local objections which are being raised, because they were legitimate and they were fair. However, the assessment we undertook was, is there any relationship here between accesses along these stretches of road and that collision that occurred, and we couldn't deem that there was anything which would relate the two things together. It was very unfortunate what happened, but we didn't think it was a concern of access.
Thank you.
Yes, it's just on, because there can be no concerns about this application apart from highway safety, which is obviously potentially very serious concern. Could you just give a bit more detail about the signage issue? Signage is something that we probably is not always at the forefront of our mind, but recently I've given this a bit of thought, and a lot of our signs are not clear, they're not cleaned regularly, they're not in the right place. Some of them in heritage sites are pretty inappropriate and garish. I've got an area in my ward which is a nightmare, and I've realised that the basic problem is the signage because of that. So signage is a bit at the top of my mind at the moment, and it's obviously crucially important for the highway safety. So can you give us a bit more detail about what precisely is being proposed regarding the signage?
At this point in time, the applicant hasn't submitted any signage because it's just going to be a private building which is going to be occupied. They might well choose to put some sort of totem sign that you would see there, but they would have to put that within their permitted development rights or an application in place for that separately. As far as I'm aware, they haven't done that at this time. The visibility displays are protected, however, so no one will be able to interfere with that visibility, so that would stand the test of time under this application. To go for your wider question, Councillor Hill, signage strategies, obviously in terms of our local road network, in terms of what signing we put on signs for locations, we can raise that with our, Highways Authority as a maintenance provider. If there are any instances that you want to bring up, then we can discuss those offline from this, but certainly there's no need for each and every applicant to put up a sign. We don't actually want a sign for each and every applicant that's putting a building or an activity onto the highway.
So there's no plans from the authority, given that there's been this fatal accident and there's this development, there's no plans to change the signage on the highway?
Just to clarify, in terms of the signage which is informing people that the building's there, or the signage which relate, because the speed limit that would be enforced on that road is 30 mile an hour on a street lit road, so there is no signing for a 30 mile an hour speed limit on a street lit road. It is self-enforcing. In terms of other signage which we put on the highway, we ensure it has the correct letter size, that it's the correct typeface, that it's the correct colouring, to make sure that it reflects what a sign on the highway should do. But similar to other circumstances, just because something occurred doesn't mean that the requirement is to put some additional signing at that location. Again, there is no real relationship between the highway alignment and that location, and a need to inform people of anything more than take the road as you find it.
Because I notice in the responses this came up about the signposts, so it's just to see if local feedback was being addressed, and I presume I don't know who's the county councillor for this area. I don't know if they've been consulted on this matter, what they've all heard and local knowledge. But we just need to get it. Obviously, we need to get this absolutely right.
Chair, can I just come in here? Yeah. This is an unusual application, and we've approached it unusually because of the very regrettable incident that took place. What the road safety audit process did is look at the totality of both the geometries of the highway, the current speed limits there, and signage, etc. in the area. And what the road safety audit concluded was that the previous accident wasn't actually to do with the road layout. It was just an unfortunate accident, to do with driver behaviour or whatever. And it did not recommend any more interventions, because what the road safety audit process does as well, how we use them normally, is it suggests changes to signage or speed limits or things like double yellow lines, etc. And on this, we went through it completely. We didn't try and influence the road safety audit team one way or other. We asked them to look at it, and they said, no, this works now as a scheme, and no further interventions are necessary. What I can do is I can run this past. I can put this on as an informative that we run this past our highway team separately, just to recheck all the signage that's in place in the area is properly maintained and fit for purpose, and there are no, maintenance issues on the signage. But there's nothing leads us to the conclusion that any additional signage is necessary at this point.
And you obviously just appreciate with the nature of it, because, when residents say this is an accident waiting to happen, and then there has been a fatal accident, and then if, touch wood, another accident happened, we need to be the highest assurance you could possibly have that every dot in the crosses.
And this is why we took the very unusual approach of doing the road safety audit before we decided whether or not to recommend a grant of planning permission. Normally, the road safety audit fine-tunes the highway layout once it's been deemed to be acceptable in principle after permission's been granted. This time we've put that at the front, we've front-loaded the process. So I'm confident that all that we've done now on a proportionate basis, we've gone beyond what we would do normally.
One final quick one, and often when there's a new development or something else that's been put in an area, you can't be 100% sure of the movement, exactly how it's going to operate. So is there going to be any monitoring after this, if it does get planning permission? Is that part of the process as well?
Not to do with this one particular development, but as places change, we do look at the need, potentially for traffic regulation orders or whatever in an area, as in the natural course of things. So it will be picked up by that. Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Would someone like to move a recommendation? Richard Dodd?
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Is that seconded? Councillor Stewart, you're seconding that recommendation? Open for debate. Anyone like to debate this issue further? Councillor Hutchinson, over to you.
I know where the site is, actually. I've been past it numerous times, and highways-wise, to me, there's no real problem at all. There is as was shown on the screen, where the accident had occurred. There's rather a sharp 90-degree corner. Up past the site, then there's another sharp 90-degree corner. There should be no reason to be travelling anywhere near 30 mile an hour around those corners, or attempting to. So I don't think there is really a highways problem. So I'd support this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Malcolm?
Can I just say, in reference to what we've just heard, that I believe there's a centre there for adults with learning difficulties? It's certainly within walking distance of the road. So that maybe signage should be something we insist on. Now, I don't know if we could do it for pedestrians, but probably to warn drivers. Don't know.
Good point. Councillor Hutchinson?
The learning centre is just off the traffic lights on the left-hand side as you turn in. It's quite away from this particular site.
Alex?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I didn't intend to speak, but if it helps, I used to work in that centre, and that centre has a barrier. There's locked doors. The users, that's unfortunately what they're called, service users, aren't allowed to come in and out without being escorted, and no vehicle can access or egress without the barrier being lifted. As I said, I used to work on that site. I well recall hundreds of vehicles per day travelling to the Welling when it was operational. I well remember the huge wagons that used to come out there daily. That factory, that unit's now relocated. There's less traffic there than there ever was. My condolences go to the family of the young girl who lost her life just over 2 years ago. It was a fatal accident, Chairman. It was reported locally. Wish it hadn't happened. It did happen, but it had nothing to do with the highways. Thank you, Chair.
And it's good to have confirmation that the Learning Difficulty Centre is a secure area for its users. Thank you. Barry Flux.
Thank you, Chair. Any industrial estate is always going to evolve over time because businesses change, new businesses come, new industries become prominent, what have we. So if it's not this application, there'll be another application down the road for more factories or whatever is needed there. I do think there probably is a need for signage or perhaps a speed reduction or something, but this isn't probably the forum for it. It'd probably be something that the local member might want to consider in their small schemes allocations, and I really would encourage that contact was made in that respect, or to the town council, to some other forum where that's appropriate. So that's my view on the situation, and I'll be supporting the application.
Thank you. Yeah, just from the chair, you know, there has been a fatality here, as our Director of Planning has said. You know, we have gone above and beyond what we normally do. We've carried out the road safety audit in advance of the application. It wasn't just there for sort of fine tuning, so I think we can all take something back from that. Thank you. All those in favour of the application, would you like to raise your hands? Sorry. Do you want to sum up?
I'll be very brief, Chair. I hate seeing derelict or wasted land, farming or industrial, and it gives great opportunity for ever so many jobs and businesses to hopefully flourish, and I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All part of the regeneration of Blythe. Good. All those in favour? So there's none against. That's approved. So our second application this afternoon is for Bedlington Station. Obviously, this was a subject of a site visit yesterday, where, you know, we got a lot of information from the local councillors, so it was a very good site visit. But this application is for the construction of a two-platform railway station, including ramped pedestrian access, new highway access, modifications to existing highways, including pedestrian footways, provision of parking for cars, electric vehicles, motorcycles, cycles, and taxis and other associated works. Construction of facilities ancillary to the station, including lighting, soft and hard landscaping, surface and subsurface drainage, utilities and other services, boundary treatment and other associated works. And this is at the Bedlington Railway Station, Station Street in Bedlington. Gordon Halliday, our planning consultant, is going to speak to this application. Gordon, over to you.
Okay, can you hear me, everyone? Yep. Apologies, it's going to be a trial, the PowerPoint today. We'll just have to hope it goes okay. Just a couple of updates. Since the report was issued, East Bedlington Parish Council have written in to say that they support the application. And there has also been a letter received this morning at about midday from Frank Orr, of Ward Hadaway, representing Bernicia Homes. Too late to email it out to you. So what Rob has agreed is that I sort of read out, it's a 3-page letter, but 2 of the pages are suggested alternative conditions. So I'm not going to read them out, but I'll sort of read out the first page of the letter. Bernicia Homes are, I mean, Frank is speaking, so he'll be able to speak to what I'm saying as well. As you're aware, we act for the Bernicia Group. We have had sight of the officer's report to the Strategic Planning Committee this afternoon at 3 p.m. The report singularly fails to grapple with construction noise, rail noise, and PA noise, among other impacts. Instead, it in effect seeks to defer consideration of these impacts to a subsequent condition stage. We note that section 7 of the report, as regards noise impacts, has been taken more or less verbatim from the Public Health Protection Unit memorandum of 27th of September, as updated on 18th of October. The committee report states at paragraph 7.35 that the unit has paid particular attention to the noise impacts on the first floor receptors at Sleekburn House, and therefore assesses a worst-case scenario for trains. What is missing from the committee report, however, is a caveat in the memo that the acoustician has used library data for similar rail traffic in similar situations to inform the prediction of noise levels at the first floor of Sleekburn House. We should be obliged if you could clarify what library data has been used. In any event, further assessment is deferred by application of condition. In addition, we note that there is simply an expectation at this time as to what the PA tannoy noise impacts will be. No adequate detailed assessment has been put forward by the applicant or council to inform the decision of committee. In turn, impacts arising from construction are not detailed in the report and are also suggested to be put off to another day by application of condition. The potential severity of each of these impacts and their cumulative impact warrant deferring any decision in respect of planning permission to a later date when those impacts have been assessed in detail and all appropriate information is put before members. Following sight of the committee report, further noise measurements have been taken by Apex Acoustics on behalf of Bernicia. In the event, therefore, that committee were minded to approve the application, we would propose on a without prejudice basis that the following conditions, informed by further measurements and assessment, be imposed on any planning permission to be granted. I'll not read out the conditions, but there's three more detailed conditions on noise than the ones that are included in your report. I'll just make a couple of comments on that. The sort of first point, I think, as I explained when Ashington Station came before committee, is that we're sort of we have been in a difficult situation here. North Tyneside were in a similar situation in considering the Northumberland Park planning application, in that a main contractor has only recently been appointed, and it's a contractor that's going to be constructing if planning permission is granted, he's going to be constructing 6 stations plus a whole variety of other works on the Northumberland line over a 2-year period. A mammoth task, and basically detailed assessments of things like what is going to be constructed when and for how long haven't yet been undertaken. We have some information on that, and the best information we have is contained in your committee report. But I would acknowledge that, oh, dearie me, it isn't complete, but it's the best we have. Apologies, I don't know what's gone wrong here. Right. Second thing is, Frank, as I mentioned, is here to speak, so he'll no doubt be giving the Bernicia Homes perspective on that. And we've also got Gary Park from the Public Protection Unit, who is the officer that's been advising the planning department on noise and related issues. Third point I would make is that I'm aware that not all members were at the committee meeting, at the site visit yesterday. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to give a fairly detailed presentation for the benefit, in particular, of those members who sort of couldn't attend the committee. Right, I'll do my best with with this. It's just not automatically going forward from sort of one slide to another. So that's the main problem. Right, same slide as you've previously had at Ashington. Northumberland Line scheme, reintroduction of passenger rail services between Ashington and Newcastle. Line currently in operation for limited freight traffic, mainly to Linemouth. Proposed half-hour frequency from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 at night. 6 new railway stations, including 5 in Northumberland. A variety of other works mainly under the Transport and Works Act. There's a public inquiry on that due to start next Tuesday in Blythe. A number of the issues that Bernicia Homes are raising are also going to be dealt with at that Transport and Works Act public inquiry. And this proposed development, as we've said, as the chairman has said, is for the station at Bedlington. Same map as you saw before. That's the Northumberland line scheme, starting at Newcastle and then winding its way north to Ashington. Location of this application site, right in the middle of Bedlington Station, on the site of the previous station, as we saw yesterday. As you can see from that map, it's a constrained site. Sleekburn House is the sort of property which I'll show photographs of later. But there are, as you can see, you know, a whole variety of both residential and commercial properties in the vicinity of the proposed station. Just a note on that slide, the sort of line splits to the north, you know, with one line going north, one line going west. You know, that's a major factor in constraining the location of this station. I mean, in many ways, it's a logical location, being the site of the previous station, but basically, that forking of the line constrained any other locations further north. So if we look at the main elements of this proposal, we're talking about 2 new platforms, each approximately 100 metres long, range of facilities as before. We did inquire whether we could get away with 1 platform here, which would have avoided a platform adjacent to Sleekburn House. But that operationally, given that the line is continuing with freight services and at the level of operation that's being proposed, it just isn't possible in this location just to have 1 platform. So 2 platforms, 1 on either side of the line. Taxi drop-off, cycle storage facilities, 2 car parks, one of which is dealt with as part of this application. So there's a car park to the north of Ravensworth Road, providing 35 spaces, including 4 accessible spaces, 4 electrical charging bays. The second application is the next application that's sort of on your agenda. 2 existing level crossings would be upgraded, including one immediately next to the station. A whole variety of highway and footpath works. There was a lot of interest in highway and footpath issues at the site visit yesterday. Chris will be able to deal with any questions you've got on detail of that. But there sort of are a host of various highway and footway works proposed, both as part of this application and as part of the Liddell's Street car parking application. 1 building to be demolished, which is the building on Station Road, formerly occupied by Boots, to provide access to the west platform. I've got a photograph of that, I'll show you that later. And the original proposals included a car park on Ravensworth Street, but that's been deleted following objections to the scheme. I mean, what you'll notice in your committee report is that there were something like 40 odd originally objections. The vast majority of these were to the car park on Ravensworth Street that has subsequently been deleted, leaving a relatively small number of objections, the one from Bernicia Homes and some other ones from residents in Terrace that we saw yesterday, adjacent to the car park. These are the various issues that the report goes into in some detail. I mean, I'll sort of refer to these not just now, but I'll refer to certain aspects as I go through the slides as we go on. Difficult slide to follow. That's the general arrangement plan for the scheme. I mean, basically, at the bottom of that, you've got the site of the existing level crossing, which is within the red line boundary. Then, going to the northwest, you've got the track and the platform on either side, the sort of main access off to the right, and then the Terrace car park, which is up adjacent to the track, this sort of area that's shaded in yellow. I appreciate not a particularly great plan. Okay, so some photographs. That's from the south level crossing. That's what it looks like at the moment. The main station buildings are out of sight on the right. Sleekburn House, which we've talked about, is behind the greenery on the left, and that's sort of looking north. These are the former station buildings on the site. These are to be retained. During construction, they'll be used as a sort of base for construction workers. Rather than bringing porta cabins onto site, they will be able to use these to a certain extent. There's a commitment afterwards. There are ongoing discussions, not part of the planning application, but ongoing discussions with various community uses for these buildings to have a sort of a beneficial use after the station comes into use, if you grant planning permission. So such things as a heritage centre or a community centre, etc., etc. So sort of various. There was a question yesterday. I mean, really, are they worthy of preservation? Certainly, your building conservation officers within the council do consider that they are what they would describe as non-designated heritage assets, and that they are worthy of preservation, in particular if they can be brought into beneficial use. That's another shot of the level crossing and these buildings from the level crossing, the sort of two existing buildings, and that's the platform to Newcastle is on the eastern side of that crossing. The platform to Ashington on the western side of that crossing. This is a signal box that's there at the moment. It's to be retained, and there was some discussion yesterday about how signalling is going to work from the site. One of the councillors was sure that it was going to operate from York. I'm told that isn't necessarily the case, and again, there's a commitment to keep the signal box, and there's also a commitment as part of the scheme, if it's not required for signalling purposes, to find a beneficial use for it in the locality. That's the building that's going to be demolished. It used to be occupied by Boots. Boots moved out and across the road, not related to this scheme, about 18 months ago, perhaps a bit more than that. It's now derelict, and basically that needs to be, well, it would be purchased, it would be demolished, and it would provide the access to the platform that would lead to Ashington. This is the existing Network Rail compound, which is on Park Terrace. I think everybody that was there yesterday felt that Network Rail should be a bit of ashamed of it. It's sort of obviously used for sort of storage. It's in pretty poor condition, and it's straight opposite a line of housing at Park Terrace, which that's another view of it. Another view of it there. The feeling of members on site yesterday seemed to be that, I mean, it's not often that the creation of a car park substantially improves the appearance of the area, but it was certainly felt yesterday that that's what was going to happen here. it's a bit of an eyesore at present. This, I mean, there was discussion yesterday. There's a and Chris can give details if anyone needs this later, but there sort of is a proposal for access into there, and you know, what's going to happen to the people, to the residents that park there at the moment, that, you know, they will continue to have on-street car parking. So there's a variety of proposals. Basically, it's a one-way system. You go into the car park through one way, and you go out onto Barrington Road near the other level crossing. Chris can give further details of that if required. This was the area that was originally proposed for the second car park, and has subsequently been deleted. It was the subject of, as I said, the vast majority of the objections, and it was subsequently, the proposals were amended to delete this and replace it by the Liddell Street car park that's elsewhere on your agenda. Right, there was a bit of criticism when we had the committee last time that that the visualizations, you know, weren't particularly good. So what I asked the applicants to do was to provide better visualizations. They come with a health warning, several health warnings. They don't form part of the formal submissions. They're for illustrative purposes only. They're not necessarily to scale. They don't show proposed landscaping. So if you know, when you sort of look at them, I'll sort of mention in some places where there is landscaping proposed, but they don't actually show the proposed landscaping. However, it's considered that they are helpful in showing the relationship between the various elements of the proposals. So that's a plan of the proposals. Somewhat better plan perhaps than the one that I showed earlier. So if we start at the bottom again, you've got the you've got the level crossing at the bottom. You've got the existing station buildings on the right-hand side with the main access into the platform leading to Newcastle. Directly opposite that, you will have the other platform, and you've got Sleekburn House, which is the building leading up from the road as far as the sort of first sort of break in the gardens. You've sort of then got a number of properties whose gardens will sort of back onto the station. That there sort of is an acoustic fence proposed between Sleekburn House and the station platform. What Frank will probably refer to is the fact that it's only a 3-metre high acoustic frame, and that the existing proposal, for example, for the tannoys is that would be higher than that. So there's a bit of work, I think, to be done in terms of, you know, the exact nature of the conditions, and as I said, a number of these things are reserved for further detail, including things like the details of the tannoy system, the sort of landscaping, and various other mitigation measures. Car park on the top right-hand side of that. So that's the visualization of the station buildings. So that's the level crossing, the station buildings at the front with the main access, and Sleekburn behind, and you can see the acoustic fence round the access point and along the platform, between the platform and Sleekburn House. You can see its relative height to Sleekburn House. As I said, that there is a commitment to sort of do some landscaping between on the Bernicia Homes site, on the Sleekburn House side of the fence, subject to the agreement of Bernicia Homes. There's a general landscape. I mean, obviously a condition can't extend beyond the red line boundary, but that there is a commitment to work with Bernicia Homes in terms of appropriate landscaping in that area. Again, another view, similar view, showing showing the entrance and Sleekburn House behind. A view of the station platform looking north. Again, you've got the acoustic fence and Sleekburn House on the left-hand side. The station platform looking south, the sort of other platform. There was some talk last time about what would happen to, would there be any protection from the elements? So you can see that there is a proposal, that there sort of will be limited waiting facilities sheltered for people waiting for trains. An aerial shot showing the station and Sleekburn House and the relationship of these two properties. The sort of area in the foreground is where the Boots building is, the sort of access to the platform heading for Ashington. The car park that I talked about on Park Terrace, this is the existing Network Rail compound that we saw was a bit of an eyesore at the present time. The sort of proposal is that would be used as a compound for storage during the construction works, and this car park on Park Terrace, which would be a car park for 36 cars, it would be constructed late in the schedule of programming of the works. Really, that's about as much as I want to say. Just maybe in summary, the sort of main issues really are the proximity of the development to Sleekburn House. What the report acknowledges is that there sort of will be some effects, both during construction and during operation. There are proposals to mitigate these to a certain extent, which are detailed in the report and which are the subject of conditions. Our view is that it is appropriate to use conditions to sort of reserve the final detail of these matters to be dealt with by condition. We sort of don't agree that it would be wrong for you today to be making a decision based on the information that you've got before us. And as I said, the sort of other issues in terms of car parking. One of the things you'll note in this application is that you sort of might think it's a relatively limited amount of car parking. We're talking about 67 spaces. In the modelling that's been done for the various stations, different assumptions are used in terms of the sort of role and purpose of each station. So, Ashington that you saw is a town centre location, quite a significant number of car parking spaces required, but it would also be the sort of station for the town centre. When you get to Seaton Delaval later on the agenda, you'll see that we're talking about a car park for 284 spaces. Edge of town location, catering for a sort of wider catchment. The sort of idea in Bedlington Station is that Bedlington Station will mainly cater for a pretty localised catchment, and that Bebside, which isn't that far away, will be the station that will attract people from places like Blythe. So 67 car parking spaces. It's been assessed independently by Highways as being an appropriate number. 10% of them being for accessible spaces, disability spaces, 10% of them being for electric charging points, which are higher than the 6% minimum that's recommended. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we now come to public speaking. On this particular application, Bedlington Station, we have two speakers. We have Frank O speaking against the application and Alana Healy speaking in support. Mr. O, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me? Thank you for the opportunity to speak to committee today on behalf of Benicia. Members will be very familiar with Benicia's role in providing social housing in Northumberland. Benicia would emphasise that it values its good working relationship with Northumberland County Council. It shares the Council's desire to bring the best to the county and its people. It recognises that the Northumberland line will bring benefits, but it will also have a very specific damaging impact on the residents of Sleekburn House, which sits immediately adjacent to the proposed new station at Bedlington. Both Benicia and the Council have responsibilities to those residents. It's a mark of Benicia's grave concern of the impacts on the residents of Sleekburn House that it's been compelled to object and be represented here today. Benicia has repeatedly said to the County Council that it is worried that the interests of those residents will, to quote, fall between the cracks of the planning position and the Transport and Works Act order. Benicia therefore asks members to take the time today to consider the needs of the residents. Sleekburn House is home to 29 residents, average age 74. The majority are over 75, the oldest is 93. Many suffer poor health or disability, including learning disabilities. 5 tenants are housebound. Over half of the residents have a care package ranging from weekly visits to up to 4 times a day. The closest facade of Sleekburn House is less than 3.25 metres from the proposed station. Sleekburn House has opening windows, which are opening much of the time because residents spend most of their waking hours in their living rooms. Residents presently experience only a very limited number of passing, not stopping freight trains, around a dozen or so a day, that have a limited impact on amenity. In stark contrast, the construction and operation of the new station will have a severe and damaging impact upon residents' amenity and health. I focus today on noise. As members know, the decibel scale is logarithmic. Every 10 dB increase is experienced by the human ear as a doubling in volume. So 40 dB is twice as loud as 30, 50 twice as loud as 40, and so on. So far as construction noise is concerned, the Council simply does not have enough detailed information of the construction programme before it. What is known, however, is that an 18-month programme, including regular non-stop working for 79 hours from Thursday evenings through the weekend to Monday morning, will have a significant effect. It will, in all likelihood, render Sleekburn House uninhabitable during that construction period, particularly bearing in mind the working area will at its closest be 1.55 metres from residents' windows. Members should therefore either defer consideration of the application until details of the construction and its effects are known, or require a planning condition based upon widely accepted model form of condition establishing noise limits that are not to be exceeded. Following receipt of the committee report, Benicia's noise consultants carried out further measurements, and we have today, this morning, suggested a draft condition to the Council that includes mitigation at Sleekburn House to achieve specific noise levels and addresses relocation of residents during the construction process. So far as operation is concerned, 62 new passenger train stops will be made at the station, and the operation of the level crossing will have significant effects. In the time I have available, however, I'd focus upon the public address system. A PA announcement is by definition louder than the background noise. It has to be in order to be audible. The impact of the PA system will be like having an amplified announcement broadcast directly outside your living room, on average, every 5 minutes for the full 16 hours of the waking day. Imagine that. Residents' living conditions will adversely move from looking out on soft landscaping, enjoying the sound of birds with a dozen passing trains, to looking out onto a 3.5 metre high fence with soft landscaping and over 200 PA announcements and 330 individual noise events throughout the day in total. Residents who experience such PA impacts adjacent to other stations describe it as being like psychological torture. The suggestion that people, to mitigate such impacts, should be required to spend their lives behind closed windows is unacceptable to Benicia. Members should therefore either defer consideration of the application until the specific detailed effects and effectiveness of mitigation is known, or require a planning condition that includes mitigation at Sleekburn House to achieve specific noise levels in respect of the PA, both on an open window and closed window basis. Thank you.
Many thanks, sir. And now I have pleasure in inviting Alana Healy to make her contribution. Alana, you've got no more than 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Certainly can.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here today. I am Alana Healy, planning consultant for the proposed station at Bedlington. As you know, the station is one of 6 new proposed stations as part of plans to reintroduce passenger services between Newcastle and Ashington. It is envisaged there will be a half-hourly service with an anticipated journey time between Newcastle and Ashington of 35 minutes. The application before you has been the subject of extensive consultations with officers and other stakeholders, both before and after planning submission. The proposals have also been the subject of a significant public consultation exercise, whereupon several hundred people wrote to support the overall Northumberland Line scheme. 128 of those representations specifically supported the proposals at Bedlington. Such support confirms that there is a significant public interest in the development of a new station at Bedlington. During the determination of the application, the applicant listened to the concerns raised by residents and sought to identify alternative sites which were appropriate to provide for anticipated car parking demand. This has culminated in the withdrawal of the site on Ravensworth Street and the submission of a separate application for a car park on Liddell Street, which is also being considered at today's committee. The applicant acknowledges the concerns raised by objectors relating to noise and other residential amenity impacts. The applicant has worked with the local planning authority to agree appropriate conditions to ensure appropriate mitigation measures are implemented as part of the scheme. The applicant is working with representatives of Benicia to provide assurances that the project will work with them as part of schemes to discharge those conditions. The officer report confirms that the proposed mitigation measures are considered appropriate by public protection to address those concerns, subject to the imposition of appropriately worded conditions. The submitted scheme before you is the only scheme technically possible to deliver a railway station at this location. The information submitted in support of the planning application confirms this to be the case and has been acknowledged by your officers. The submitted documents provide a robust case demonstrating the application is in accordance with the relevant planning policies. The submitted transport assessment includes information on passenger demand forecasting based on national and local policy guidance. The passenger demand forecast has also been informed by discussions with Network Rail, Northern and the combined team of consultants. The council officers have accepted the modelling basis for the car park demand and are content to recommend approval subject to conditions, as detailed in the report. The station and wider scheme will deliver the transport infrastructure which is required to attract inward investment, create additional employment opportunities, enhance economic vitality and encourage further economic growth in Bedlington, Bedlington Station and South East Northumberland more widely. The proposed railway station will facilitate increased access to employment and training opportunities for our residents. The development proposes a new station adjacent to the site of the original railway station, therefore respecting the local townscape and historical importance of the line's industrial heritage. Policies within both the adopted Wansbeck local plan and emerging Northumberland local plan identify Bedlington Station as a safeguarded location for a future railway station. The station is a sustainable development which both national and local planning policies confirm should be supported. As stated in the officer report, there are no objections to the application from statutory consultees. When balancing the objections made to the application against the significant economic, social and environmental benefits to the scheme, we believe the application ought to be approved. The application has been thoroughly assessed by planning, highways and other local authority officers and is found to be in accordance with relevant planning policies, and there are no material considerations to indicate planning permission should not be granted. Officers consider the application ought to be granted permission subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report. As such, we would respectfully urge members to accept the planning officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Members of the committee, you now have the opportunity to ask questions to our planning officers. Yes, Councillor Ball.
Can I just check, you mentioned the taxi drop-off. Whereabouts will that be? Because it's not marked out and obviously it's...
Sorry, the
Is it
taxi
like-
drop-off.
Yeah,
Um,
is and just
right,
the drop-off
I mean, my
point?
understanding is that the taxi drop-off is at the site of the car park at the Terrace car park.
Right, thank you.
I mean, I might be
It's
wrong.
quite a distance away, just with regards to things like disabled access and...
I mean, I might
did-
be right, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure if the highway colleagues might be able to.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. Yeah, the taxi drop-off bays are at the very northern end of the Park Terrace car park, so that gives direct access onto the footways around the station onto the northern ramp on the southbound platform.
thank you.
Thank you. Georgina, question?
2, please. The first point is the visuals were really good, by the way, and it is really refreshing, particularly for somebody like myself who's not good at reading maps, to see really clear visuals. So more, and that's obviously from the applicant, so more of those visuals, particularly for the big complex applications, we really appreciated. I presume on the visuals with the car park, when you had 6 car parks, that wasn't a prediction on how busy the car park was going to be. That was just because it's just to clarify, the assessment you've done is that the car parking isn't unnecessarily large. It will be used and it will be at capacity or near capacity.
Yes, I mean, there's been a study. There's been a problem finding car parks. Suitable spaces for car parks. What we saw yesterday was that there sort of are 2 or 3 other existing car parks. One of these yesterday was sort of pretty full. There was another one that was pretty empty, but at certain times of the day, for example, school drop-offs, it's very busy. And the sort of work that was done on the car parking assessments found that during the survey time, these car parks usually had an occupancy rate at peak times of more than 80%. So it was necessary to actually find new car parks, and the 67 car parking spaces that was modelled is close to the sort of maximum modelling requirement that that sort of ACOM did as part of this. So yes, there is new car parking required, and the 67 is felt to be of the appropriate order. That's been checked. The sort of modelling, the assumptions that have gone into that have been checked by County Highways, who have endorsed that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And the second question, which is really getting to the nub of it, certainly from me, I mean, my thought process during the presentation, and that there were some objections, was the history of rail infrastructure is that people have always objected, and we would have no rail infrastructure if, planning authorities over the decades, centuries, or whatever had objected on that basis. And I was also thinking, I know lots of areas in my patch where people live near railway lines, but of course, listening to Frank from Benicia, it was quite convincing about this very severe impact. And obviously there's a big difference between being near a station and a railway line. So could you just respond to what he said in terms of the impact on the residents of Sleepburn House, and just to clarify what the options are, because listening to that was very convincing to me that this is an unacceptable impact for those residents, even though the overall scheme is great.
Yeah, Chair, I'll answer this one. Okay. What we need to do on this question really is build up how we've approached it. Okay. And for a planning decision, when you are talking about location, you're actually asking the fundamental question, is this location the correct one for X? whatever that may be. Okay. Through the planning process, we've consulted public protection and a range of other statutory consultees, and there are no formal objections on the basis of all the information submitted. Okay. That's enough to say, in principle, yes, this is an acceptable location, in this case for a railway station. What the public speaker put forward on a very articulate basis was that there are clearly some very significant concerns about the detail of how this will work. Okay. And I'll answer that in several ways. First of all, Gordon made the point that all the detail was not available when the appraisal was done. That's true in the sense that the finalised phasing and work programme of the contract to carry out the construction work has not been finally agreed yet. But still, we looked at the overall envelope of impacts with consultees that was found to be acceptable. It is very frequent, and as you have seen many applications over the years come to this committee, that we attach conditions for construction management plan and for noise management to be submitted as part of planning conditions as the final actual project delivery gets worked out. Okay. Another way of looking at this, and to phrase this another way, is that clearly there are concerns about noise from the station operation and construction. Again, I would go back to the point that the evaluation to date has not exposed the fact that anything in principle will be unacceptable. So that's why, again, we are using conditions to fully flesh out the details. Okay. So in terms of passporting across the public speaker's suggested noise limit as a condition, I'm going to advise this committee that they don't do that, but that we take that information on board when we look at the reserved matters discharge, if you decide to grant this in terms of the final scheme. Because when we look at it, we may look at setting decibel limits, which may be higher or lower than the ones suggested by the public speaker, but we will base it off evidence with a precisely worked up scheme. Okay. The other issue was mentioned about the tannoy system, and I think it's a point well made as well that indeed railway stations do need to have both visual and audio public address systems for user information. Again, this is subject to a reserved matters planning condition requiring a scheme to be fully fleshed out and detailed, and that can look at things, for example, if when the noise modelling is done, a limited number of speaker points could be used, but those would clearly have to need to be at a higher volume to cover the entire station area, or to keep the volume level down from any one point source, we could use a much larger number of speakers, so the overall noise level will be lower. But again, that needs to be worked out at the final detail stage, and this is a perfectly normal way of doing this sort of development scheme, where we've looked at the principle of both construction, operation, and noise from the public address system, and that will be looked at via conditions. I'm not discounting the points made by the public speaker. I'm saying that we will need to work up those into a proper scheme to be agreed by condition. And finally, finally, the belt and braces approach to this is that our public protection will be team involved in this, and there are also other parts of legislation because the speaker said there's a risk of it falling between the cracks, and that is not the case because it will cover by conditions, but also there's opportunity for looking at noise nuisance issues, say from the public address system, if it didn't work properly. Okay, so I'm confident that it can be controlled. It's been agreed in principle. So our work to date includes acceptable in principle, and the recommended conditions give us the correct vehicle and levels of controls for covering this issue in detail.
And I suppose outside the planning system, I mean, you're kind of thinking that the residents as described, it is a particular problem for them, where for other people, particularly if they commute to somebody, it really wouldn't be such an issue. It seems that the type of residents would be a particular problem being where other people could, so there could be some imaginative relocation or...
Yeah, well, and this I was going to come on to, if you'll allow me to continue slightly here. Yes. The construction phase of any scheme normally has separate planning conditions because that's when often when the biggest impacts come or different impacts. However, if, say, a temporary relocation was required, as it would be with any construction period, that's a matter for the applicant to agree with Benicia, and that's not a planning matter for us to consider today, because we need to treat the applicant as though there are any applicant and not just a public sector one here. So that would be a matter for Benicia and the applicant to resolve between themselves in terms of funding and costs for a temporary relocation. So we couldn't condition that or look to require it. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have questions from Ian Hutchinson, Julie Foster and Alex Wallace. Ian, over to you first, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarity, it was said yesterday that the trains will be every 30 minutes. Is that from Newcastle to Washington?
Yes, it's a 30-minute timetable in both directions.
So there's a train every quarter of an hour?
Yes.
Both
Yes,
ways?
yes.
Right. Plus the goods trains?
Yes, and the goods, the numbers of goods trains are in your report. It's a, and as Frank said, it's a relatively small number compared to the number of passenger trains. I think it's about 30 a week in total.
Right. Just I've got concerns about Benicia Home, well not about Benicia Homes, about the placing of the home. And as was said, it's the boundary would be as close as 1.3 metres from the actual building, the boundary of the station.
Yeah, I think what Frank is referring to there is the required, the sort of, in order to construct the platform. I mean, at the end of the day, the fence between the platform and Sleepburn House is going to be, I think it's about 5 metres of that proportion. But in order to construct the platform, the applicant needs to, through the Transport and Works Act order, needs to get a right to work with closer to the Bernicia house, Sleepburn House, in order to actually do the construction works. But the actual fence line is not going to be 1.3 metres. I mean, again, as I said, these plans aren't to scale, but you can see from these plans that that there is a gap, and I think that's in the region of 4.5 to 5 metres. It's rather than 1.3 metres.
I've interpreted this wrong, I'm afraid. I didn't realise that was working distance away, and that was the actual distance. Was
no, it's and the sort of other thing to point out is that, I mean, what I've tried to get as much information as possible on this, what's going to happen in this 18 months, and the best estimate that the applicants can give us now, having talked to the firm that's got the construction works, is that it will take approximately 5 months to construct the platform, and that it's the construction of the platform that is adjacent to Sleepburn House that is obviously of Bernicia Homes' prime concern. So we aren't. Yes, we're talking about a total scheme of 18 months. 2 to 3 months of that will be in constructing the Liddell Street car park, which is a distance away. Some of it will be in constructing the Terrace car park, which isn't going to have a significant effect on Bernicia Homes. Some of it is going to be constructing the sort of forecourt and the main access, which isn't going to have so there's certain elements of the scheme will have a greater impact on Bernicia Home, on Sleepburn House than others. Frank also in his presentation referred to this 79-hour window of construction, and it is true that because it's going to be an operational line during construction, i.e. that the freight trains have got to continue to run in order to supply the biomass to the Linemouth power station, the construction is mainly going to take place. I think it's between 11 p.m. on a Thursday and 5 or 6 a.m. on a Monday. What the applicants have said to me is that that doesn't, it isn't going to be every weekend, and it isn't going to be for 79 hours every weekend. There will be a shift pattern, some 36 hours, 52 hours, or whatever. So it isn't going to be worked all of the time. But our problem is that what we've given you is the best information that we've got available. You know, Frank was, you know, I'm not saying Frank was exaggerating the effects, but he was presenting, you know, the absolute worst case scenario. What there is a firm commitment over and above whatever goes into the planning conditions. There's a firm commitment by the council as the promoter of this scheme to work with Bernicia Homes in terms of the detail. Now I know that, that there's nothing in black and white on that, and it's not going to be a planning condition, etc. But there is an element of trust involved in that.
Thank you.
May I have one more?
Yes, one more.
Towards highways. I noticed where the building was to be demolished, there appeared that was the main entrance onto that particular platform. And I noticed some dustbins there, some large, wagon-type lifting bins. I don't know if that's going to happen, but is there anything to stop anybody parking on that particular point? Or will there be anything to stop anyone parking on that particular point if this is approved? There.
Obviously, those as Gordon said, those visuals are indicative, and there may obviously the curb will be raised because it's not a vehicular access point. There is a pedestrian crossing going in. Actually, it's not shown on that visual. There is an at-grade pedestrian crossing going in, so there will be a small section of drop curb. But as far as we're aware, there's no physical barrier, but there will be safety and other concerns in terms of that they'll have to address for their management of the private area. Obviously, they don't want vehicle intrusion onto there, and there may be security outside the planning to stop vehicle incursion onto that area. I'm not quite sure what those green bins show, but certainly to the left of that is the cycle shelter and the ticket machine. I'm quite sure what that green shape is, but be part of the infrastructure.
I just hope we've looked far enough ahead as to put bollards in to stop people parking there, because if they can't park somewhere else, they may just park there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously look at as the highways works are developed as part of the 278. We'll look into that.
Mr. O, I'm afraid as a speaker, you get your 5 minutes and there's not an opportunity to come back. So unfortunately, you can't participate in the meeting anymore. Okay, sir? Yeah. Julie, over to you.
Chair, can I just clarify that Councillor Foster came in after the application had started, so she can't partake in this application. But you... Oh, sorry.
Yes,
you will be able to take part in the next two.
So she can't ask a question now? No. Okay. Sorry, Julie.
Right, well, can I just put my apologies in for coming in late? I did explain to you yesterday.
You did indeed.
So but
no.
my
Fine,
apologies.
Julie. Alex Wallace. Sir.
Thanks, Chair. I do have two questions, Chair, but I was pleased to hear the concerns raised about Sleekburn House, and I was equally pleased to hear the responses of the Director and Mr. Halliday. It's good to, it's right to raise the concerns of 29 residents and the others in Blenheim, and I hope the responses take into consideration the occupants of Park Terrace and those that live above the shops in Ravensworth Terrace, because that's equally as important. Equally and probably more important is the 1,000 school children who access those pavements and those roads 5 days a week, 39 weeks of the year. We had a fatality on that level crossing, sadly. I mentioned this yesterday where we were on that site, and can I say, Chair, where we mentioned that site visit, thank you for arranging it. I particularly found it extremely helpful. Even though I've worked in that area for many, many years, it was still helpful to be on site. We did have a fatality, a young girl caught between two buses crossing the level crossing. Terrible it was. I'm working at the moment with Councillor Foster looking at safety when it comes to school closing times. But the question I have with regard to the school is, did we consult with the school and ask for any comments from them? And if so, did they make any comments back, Mr. Halliday? That's my first question, Chair.
I don't think that there was. There was obviously the sort of normal neighbour consultation that takes place on the back of every planning application. I don't think that. But I can't say 100% sure, but I don't think that the schools were caught within that consultation.
That's fine. I appreciate the fact that the consultation document went out in December, and I'm quietly confident the school made an input then, and I'm aware there was over 1,000 inputs made. My second question is, and it's being raised with the number of car parking spaces. I personally think it's an underestimate, because most people will come from Stakeford and Guidepost to access Bedlington Station by car. They won't travel backwards to Ashington. By the time they've done that, they could have been at Cramlington on their way to Newcastle. People from Bedlington, my personal opinion is they'll travel to Bevside rather than get stuck at the gates. So my question is, can we ensure the signage at the likes of Westview and Park Terrace to say this is for residents only? I think it's very important we take cognizance that the amenity is really for people who wish to travel, and we must protect those who remain at home and not make the conditions any worse on them. And I don't think we will be making conditions worse on them, but I'd like to, rather than, as time goes on, seek permission for residence permits, which will then make a cost to those residents. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Chair, can I just answer the final point? Yeah. What we will do as part of this process, if members decide to support it, is that all the car parks as part of the Northumberland railway station car parks have the requirement for car parking management plans with them, which requires the usage to be monitored and other interventions identified and followed up. And if it became clear, as the car parks became more popular, or the usage of the trains became more popular, that it was displacing and causing problems on local roads, we would look then at the need for residents-only parking schemes. It is a sledgehammer to crack a nut if it's not needed, but we have the potential to introduce them further down the line if they are required. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 5 of them, actually. I don't know, we're operating a 1 or 2 question policy. First of all, how many trains? I'm bamboozled by these figures. I mean, I get 34. If there's, if that's one way, that's 68 both ways, plus the freight trains. So how many trains are we talking about every day in the 17-hour period?
Yeah, I think you're approximately right.
Thank you, thank you.
Next question.
Don't, yep, thank you. Don't try and rob us with money. Right. Can I ask why we didn't look at moving the platform further north, just a few hundred yards? So it's actually, the houses there are 3-4 times further away than what Sleekburn House is. And we could have had the entrance to the platform at the north side rather than the south side, because that's closer to the principal car park, I presume, that you're talking about. And talking about car parks, there's one just across the road from the front entrance that's never been mentioned. I mean, so that was my next question.
Right, well, I can deal with that one. I mean, well, I'll do them in reverse order. The sort of car park that we parked in yesterday, that was virtually empty.
Yeah.
That is empty, in my experience, for lots of the day, but it's pretty full at other parts of it. You know, so for example, when sort of kids have been, it seems that a lot of kids get dropped off there, or a lot of people use that early morning. But the modelling that was done, sorry, the surveys that were done showed that at certain parts of the day that car park had an 80% occupancy rate, but at other parts of the day, clearly it is empty, or not, well, you know, virtually empty. Your second question, or
it was about why didn't we just move the
yeah,
platform further north?
well,
just hundreds of yards.
Yeah, okay, a detailed investigation was done, and there is some information about that within the submitted documents about the constraints on locating a new station at Bedlington, and a major constraint is this forking of the railway to the north, and you actually couldn't, you actually can't. There are safety considerations in putting a station in close proximity to that sort of forking. So I mean, it was looked at. It wasn't just because that's where, you know, the old station was, therefore this is where the new station was. It was looked at, but it was discounted for operational and logistical and safety reasons as part of the you know, the option evaluation exercise that was done prior to the submission of the plan, you know, as part of the consultation, prior to the consultations that were done at the pre-application stage.
The movement I'm talking about is starting the platform probably where it ends, or where the proposal is for it to end now. I mean, it's just the length of the platform, but moves it out of the way of Stakeford House completely. And the houses that back onto it then have gardens 2-3 times the size you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a picture of it there. I just don't know why we haven't done that.
Chair, could I just interject at this point? For any scheme, there is a potentially almost infinite number of variable other schemes. We need to look on the basis of the merits of this scheme tabled. If members think this is the wrong location for a railway station and can evidence the reasons why, then it would have to be for a refusal of the application. It isn't a material consideration in itself that there could be the existence of other schemes. Okay.
Rob, my question was why we hadn't considered it, or did we consider it?
It has. There's been a quite extraordinarily exhaustive process, including public consultation in the location of both the car parks and the railway station leading up to this process. And the application was the end of that process rather than any beginning of that process, all I can say is this one.
Can I ask about something that was mentioned? Economic development, because none of these stations have I seen any economic development per se, just, in relation to the physical size of the station. Like those existing units could be retail economic development units, there could be something else. We need to be looking at this, because we've got a captive audience when people get off trains and get on trains.
Yeah. The business case that was put together for the financial submission for government for financial support for the entire Northumberland line project was based on its economic benefit. If we're at a situation where this was a finely balanced argument as to whether the permission should be granted or not, I agree with you that a strong economic case would need to be promoted for it. However, given that the application hasn't identified serious harm from the scheme, there is nothing sort of on the negative column that needs to be offset by the economic benefit. The economic benefit was part of the justification which led to the entire project being set up. I think that's the best way of looking at this.
Strategic economic.
Yes, and that was put out in the business case to central government and accepted by central government in their decision to support this. Okay.
Just hope I haven't lost on that. One final one, Chair, if I may. And I want to talk about indiscriminate parking. But I want to talk about it from a different perspective, because the best answer we got when we asked how long free parking would last was probably a year, possibly 2 years at the outside. So we're then looking at parking charges. which means, as far as I can see, the streets will be chocker and any train station area. So are we prepared for that eventuality?
I mean, it's covered in the committee report. There's a paragraph that, you know, that sort of talks about that, and you know, the sort of modelling has been based on free parking. There's a commitment, I understand, from the cabinet that there will be free parking, and it will then be reviewed. There is no, there is no basis on us making any assumptions as to what that review might decide in terms of charging at these car parks. So I mean, I think the decision on this planning application has got to be based on the information that's presented in the report, which is that the number of car parking spaces that are required for this station is 67. It's been verified by County Highways. It's based on certain assumptions and criteria. They may change in the future, and the council is going to have to take that into account at the particular time.
Chair, just briefly, may I? Matthew has secured a condition on this application, which is that prior to any change in the charging strategy, the current charging strategy is it's free. But if that changes, details of the amendments and any associated mitigation. Now, to be clear, we would include associated mitigation to be correcting the on-street problem as part of a charging schedule. So if someone comes forward in the future and says we want to change our planning charging schedule, we want to start actually making people pay for parking in these car parks, we will reflect that to them and say you need to handle the displacement, which will obviously occur because people will choose to park on street for free, will they not? And we'll push those positions on your behalf and make sure that any applicant, whoever that may be, does the correct work and puts the right traffic controls in place to protect the current level of residential amenity, which the current residents are more than entitled to.
I just wanted to chip in, Councillor Robertson, about two of your points. And that is, first of all, the point about moving the North platform north. You know, I do get Gordon Halliday's point about moving that platform closer to the fork of the railway, so making it a little bit more dangerous. So, yes, it would be great to move it away from East Sleekburn House, but, you know, I can understand why it's there to keep these great big long trains away from that fork. And the other thing, you know, I think the point that you mentioned, you know, this whole process we're going through at the minute with Blythe, Bedlington, an economic push forward, you know, it is one of the central themes in the Northumberland line, this economic corridor that follows the line of the railway, where we're trying to get industry and businesses to invest. So, yeah.
I understand that, Chair, but that's a spatial strategy. What I'm trying to do is make sure my town benefits from a localised strategy, economic strategy.
Well, and we're right here for that too, Councillor Robertson,
Good.
right here for that. Any more questions? Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, surely, Chairman, we all go to stations. I mean, Councillor Hill doesn't drive, so she's an expert on road signs. So I'm not a great expert on trains. However, you know, I get the metro sometimes, and it's a huge long platform, and there's 2 or 3 carriage train comes in, and it goes right to the far end, or whatever. Can we not ask the question that when trains go north, they go as far north as they can, so they're well away from this Venetia House, or whatever? Just a point. A question.
Taken on board. Any more questions? Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just pick up on the point about the pedestrian safety? Obviously, it's been raised, the issue has been raised that there are, I think, 2 schools in close proximity to the site. Within this application, has it been looked at with regard to the crossing, the road and pedestrian crossing as it is? Has the safety of that been looked at in the sense that obviously it's going to be a lot more trains using that, means there's going to be a lot more times when people are waiting to cross across the crossing. Has it been looked at, and are there plans within this to upgrade that crossing to the maximum kind of safe position it can be? Because you could have dozens and dozens of school children waiting at one side of that crossing.
I think it's better if Chris or Matthew deals with that.
Yeah, so as part of the Northumberland line, obviously there's extra trains going up on that track, and Network Rail have done assessment on every single crossing point, and they made recommendations to the project team for which the Bedlington South crossing is to be upgraded. The pedestrian footway across the crossing is to be widened as much as it possibly can on that crossing area, and obviously there's new barriers, etc. going in, so it's all been considered as part of both the Network Rail assessment and also the safety audit that we undertook for the highway interventions as part of the scheme.
Thank you.
Georgina?
Thank you. Councillor Dodd could keep his banter to the topic I was raising in this application. You're a bit dated. My key concern in this is about Sleepburn House. So before we move on to recommendations, could you just clarify again what Benicia were asking for in terms of the deferment and the conditions they wanted, because that would be something that potentially interests me.
I'll answer this one. What the speaker was asking for, and what they put in writing at lunchtime, was to either defer this matter, the decision, until this is worked out properly, to use their words, or to use their conditions which they have drafted and supplied to us. My view is that the conditions we have tabled enable us to cover the level of detail they required, and were purposefully put in to do that. And actually, I wouldn't want to agree today to use their conditions, because we may want to use either less onerous or more onerous versions of the final schemes, depending on the evidence that we get through the normal process. And just to be clear, this is a perfectly normal process where noise management plans, construction management plans are secured by a reserved matters condition, so the full details can be worked out. And just to recap, the principle has been looked at by our public protection team at length, and they have no objections to it, subject to the use of the conditions we are proposing at the moment. So my advice to the committee is that we have this covered in the conditions as tabled. And if I could draw your attention to where those conditions are, and I think they're on page 66 of your report. And it's the section headed noise and vibration. So 28 talks about the details of the amplified voice or tannoy system. 29 then looks at acoustic barriers, and then 30, which is the one which looks at construction, which then requires details of that, and it's there to protect residential amenity. And condition 31, there's mitigation of rail noise, approved in writing, and then there's a standard condition about deliveries or collection during the construction phase, 32. So there are well-used approaches to conditions there, set out in conditions 28 to 32. And my advice to the committee is that they do cover the issues of concern raised by the public speaker.
And Director of Planning, can I ask, will those matters come back as a reserved matters condition for you and I to finally monitor and decide?
Yeah. What happens normally in terms of conditions like this, which are required to be discharged by agreement of details, is that those are normally done at officer level. However, given the prominence and importance of this scheme, I will make sure that you and I discuss the final versions of the schemes to be attached, and then you can agree that they go as far as meeting the members of this committee's concerns. Okay.
Thank you.
I think there's been a few references to reserved matters. I think we discussed this earlier. I think what Rob means is a discharge of conditions application, because
yes,
obviously there's no reserved matters on this application.
No, reserve matters condition, I think, is what you
well,
referred to.
yeah, reserve matters attached to an outline. This is a full permission, and these are conditions who require the submission of information to be discharged. Thank you.
Just ask, sorry, apropos of a potential recommendation. I mean, I would be, if you'd said there's some noise issues and concerns with Benicia and we're working with them and we've got a good relationship with them, I would be more assured than the fact that somebody from Benicia has come and they obviously haven't got that much confidence because they've asked for the matter to be deferred. So that's what's concerning me about confidence about a satisfactory agreement on this. And also, can I just say, if, for example, we did agree to defer to get this detail and discuss this, is there any detriment? I mean, the spades aren't waiting to go in the ground tomorrow morning or anything, are they?
Chair, can I just restate the point that the use of conditions like I outlined is the perfectly standard way of tackling this issue on major construction projects, and that clearly the public speaker was representing his client on this, and he put forward two scenarios, either defer or attach conditions, and my advice to the committee is that the conditions within the report allow for the concerns to be handled adequately.
Question from Councillor Hutchinson.
It is a question, I suppose. I presume if this is approved and it comes to yourself and the chairman, I presume the vice chairman will be included in that?
Yes, could well be. Yeah. As he's the local member, we'd like his input.
Thank you.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Can I ask for a proposal? Alex Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I've listened to the questions. I've heard all the answers. I attended the site visit yesterday. I've read the report extensively. I've listened to my residents in this ward since last year. And in fact, one of the conditions in here refers to the Wansbeck District Local Plan of 2007. That's how long we've been listening. That's how long we've been waiting. I move recommendation that we grant permission subject to the attached conditions as outlined in the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded by Councillor Dodd? Any contributions for debate? Barry Flux?
Yes, thank you. I listened a lot to the comment about, I think it's called Sleekburn House. Now, I represent a ward with a railway station, which has a care home which was built less than 10 years ago, which doesn't appear to be a demonstrably different distance, which I can tell from experience you'd barely be able to hear the tannoy announcement, which will have the fast train going direct from King's Cross to Edinburgh Waverley, going at 100 and goodness knows what miles per hour past it. I can't see, you know, they're not going to go that quick here. I can't see what the issue is, to be perfectly blunt. And that's why, and it's the only thing I saw as a contributing factor, apart from maybe the crossing. So I wholeheartedly support approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm disappointed in this application. And I'm disappointed because it's not innovative or ambitious enough for what we really wanted. However, and it's shoehorned into the overall scheme of things. But we've heard that it's the only option technically possible, and it will be our connectivity onto the rail system. And for that reason alone, I'll support it.
Thank you. Richard Dodd.
Yeah, we've waited a long time to get to a point where we're actually at planning. We've hailed this scheme a lot of times, probably too many times. It is green, trying to stop traffic going into Newcastle or wherever it goes. It ticks an awful lot of boxes. What came first, the care, you know, the old folks' home or the railway? The railway's been there a long time. When I go to Strasbourg twice a year, there's a tram system runs through Strasbourg, and I tell you what, we'd give you eye teeth for something like that. It's really close to buildings, shops, everything, and you know, you hear the ring of the bell, you hear the rumble or whatever, and it's really, really used. And you get used to little bits of noise, a bit like the noise I get in the countryside, which is the dawn chorus of crows or whatever. You get used to things. And if I had to go into retirement, if I ever get retirement home, stroke, whatever, if I ever get there, I'd like to think there's something going on around me. You know, there's people go to see the sea, or you know, you want things to be happening around you. So I don't have any qualms about this. I think it'll breathe life into Bedlington Station and Bedlington and around about. My only gripe would be that those brick buildings remain, because I think you've missed an opportunity to put in a modern system or a modern sort of connection. I can't see that there are any great architectural bits, whereas people might just object to them because, or want to save them because it might slow the project up. But that's for them to work out in years to come, if they're not used, what will happen to them. But I really welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bourne.
For me, I'm really supportive of the railway line coming back. I can't wait for it. But I think this station in this location is not right. It might have been back when it was closed, but for now, for the amount of transport and the issues around the highways, when you look at things like the pick-up and drop-off points, saying that they will be getting used at the car park, the reality is people will be using the points closest to going in and out of the station. There's already problems outside the shops. We seen yesterday that when the buses go by, the traffic on the other side of the road either has to wait or the cars are passing over. I just think there is a number of issues regarding this location, and that's before we look at the fact that there's two schools in really close proximity to the crossing. The pavements aren't wide enough. Yesterday there was only a handful of us near the crossing, and it was a danger to us. So what's it going to be like at first thing in the morning when them car parks that are already at 80% capacity, when they're trying to wait to get across? I just think there's a number of issues that still need to be addressed. It is an area for antisocial behaviour. What's going to be going on the outside of that area? I just think there is a number of issues, and I would seek to defer this till we can get some more clarification on these issues.
Mr. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've not been to Strasbourg, but I have been to Felling and Forden, right? And in the 1980s, the metro system was built across Tyneside, and it's not dissimilar in a lot of the areas. People may have been to Jesmond, and what that's brought to them is a new lease of life for the residents. And yeah, I feel sorry for the residents of Sleekburn House, and there will be other residents in the area who are similar circumstances, similar age or abilities. But I think this being the centre of the area for them, it will bring a new lease of life to the town. It will bring businesses there. There will be problems with the parking, but that's the sort of thing that will be sorted out later on in time. So Felling has dealt with it. Strasbourg obviously got the problems there as well. But in reality, it's well worth investing in that station.
From the Chair, I'm also in favour of this application. Yes, Bedlington Station closed in 1964. Bedlington has continued to develop. The care home's been built. We've got Blenheim Drive, the new houses. The schools have expanded. But I do think our planners are on the ball and have looked at, you know, every eventuality for noise and for parking. It is a difficult one. As Councillor Robertson says, we are shoehorning it in. We're squeezing it into where it used to be. It's not the same space as it used to be. It's more built up. It's more developed. But it's really sort of Frank O's comments that I'd like to deal with, and I'd just like to say, sir, that you know, we listened to what you said, and when the noise and tannoy system conditions come back, we will deal with them very carefully to ensure that the residents of East Sleekburn House are well looked after and protected. I do think there's an issue here. Those residents are living on the doorstep of the northern platform, and as such we should be protecting them and looking after them. We'll do that, I'm sure. Anybody else want to speak? Georgina.
Thank you, Chair. I would, I know we've got a proposal on the table. I would have backed Councillor Ball in terms of a deferment, but it doesn't seem that's the majority in the meeting. I know we haven't taken to a vote, but from what everyone else has said. So I do just, I do have concerns about Sleekburn House. I'm going to have to put faith in yourselves and the local member to negotiate all this, but I would, I'm not 100% happy about that, but the overall scheme is, of course, a massive public benefit and something to be welcomed. So I will be voting for this, and I really just hope that you can have meaningful discussions and with Benicia to for the interest of those residents. And it is, I'm afraid, it is completely different. As I say, I know residents who live by railway stations, and you do get used to the noise of the train passing and seagulls and the wind blowing and all the rest of it, but not tannoy noises.
Indeed.
You don't.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if that's the end of the vote, can I ask? Oh, no. I'm going to, at the end of the debate, I'm going to ask you to vote on this item now.
Unless Councillor Wallace wants to say.
Do you want to say anything else, Councillor?
Yeah, just a little bit, Chair, because last time when I moved Ashington, I gave the speech before I give the recommendation, so I kept it short today. Can I say it's been interesting? I've been to Strasbourg, I've been to Berwick, I've been told that Martin Robinson's the ward councillor for East Bedlington, Bedlington East. It's actually Councillor Wilczek, Becky Wilczek. And Becky is also a member of East Bedlington Parish Council. And I can tell you, Benicia made no objections to East Bedlington Parish Council. And I find that's a bit of a sadness that perhaps an organisation like Benicia, who we have a lot of time for and is a big landlord in my ward, Sleekburn, and Bedlington East, didn't consult with the parish council with their concerns, because I'm sure the parish council would have liked to have taken them forward. Chairman, I appreciate what Councillor Dodd said about the station buildings, and there's a lot of mileage in that. I'm hoping that East Bedlington Parish Council is one of those considered to turn that into an asset as time moves on. Sadly, nobody mentioned the Boots building, which is actually late 19th century. Nobody's mentioned that at all, and that's to come down. That is a bit tragic, but it's absolutely essential. Most importantly, Chair, Bedlington Station needs this. It will regenerate an ex-mining area. It's ironic, but kids used to get on that train from Newbiggin and Ashington and get off and walk to Bedlington Grammar School, because that's what it used to be, the academy. I'm sorry, but I remember those days. Finally, Chair, to make sure that the economic prosperity comes to Bedlington, I would make a plea that car parking remains free for the lifetime of this train, for as long as it continues. Let's have free parking in Bedlington Station to help people who need it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, all those in favour of Alex Wallace's recommendation to approve this application, would you like to raise your hands? Thank you. Anybody against? Councillor Paul. Thank you. That application is passed. Thank you very much for your contributions and your debate. I think we've, you know, done it proud. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, the next application that we're dealing with today is on page 71, and this is construction of parking for cars, electric vehicles and other associated works, modifications to existing highways, including pedestrian footways and new highways access. And this is land north of 6 Little Street, Ravensworth Street, Bedlington. And I'm going to ask Gordon Halliday to speak to this application.
Comfort break for 5 minutes.
Comfort break for 5 minutes? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll restart the meeting if that's all right. Just to remind you, we're dealing with our third application this afternoon, construction of parking for cars, electric vehicles, other associated works, modification to existing highways, pedestrian footways and new access, and this is land north of 6 Little Street, Ravensworth Street, Bedlington, and this is the other car park for the Bedlington railway station. Over to you, Gordon.
Yeah, sorry, it's me again. Right, I'm going to. You've sort of heard the first bit of the presentation, so I'm not going to repeat it. It's not to underplay this application, but there's little point in repeating things. Northumberland line scheme, you're all aware of what that is. You know where it runs from. This is the location of the application site to the north of the proposed Bedlington Station. The sort of road to the left of the access into the site is Ravensworth Street, which we walked along yesterday, and Ravensworth Street leads up to the junction where the Bedlington South crossing is that we've been talking about on the previous application. The main elements, it's currently an undeveloped site, 0.19 hectares. We're talking about here about a 31 car park space, including 2 disability spaces and 3 electric vehicle charging spaces. Access from Ravensworth Street and various improvements to the highways and footways are proposed to ensure safe passage for vehicles and pedestrians between the car park and the railway station. And we're talking about a distance of about 230 metres. What I didn't do was give you an update. There's one update compared to the committee report, and that is again a late observation from East Bedlington Parish Council, who support the application and would welcome additional electric vehicle charging points if available. So there's 10% of the spaces here are going to be electric vehicle charging points. As I pointed out in the previous presentation, you know, the sort of norm is 6%. So they are already making over provision compared to the norm on this particular application. Fewer key issues in this one, principle of the development, and then highway residential amenity impact on character and appearance of the area. Each of these is dealt with in turn. That particular site, that particular plan isn't a very good one, so I'll skip over that. That's the sort of general arrangement plan showing the sort of configuration of the car park, the access road at the north, the access into the car park, access and egress of the car park to the north, and then to the west you get onto the access, onto the main street at Ravensworth Street. Some photographs. That's what the site looks like just now. County Council for sale, well, a County Council agent for sale sign. It has been marketed for housing, but the preferred use of this site now is as a car park to serve the Bedlington Station. Just going back to that, you can see that sign. So there's at the moment that's Little Street, the sort of lane behind Ravensworth Street. So there's no access for cars and motorcycles down that lane. That's the view from the south as opposed to the north, and you can see the commercial properties. There's a couple of commercial properties at the southern end of the site, with you can see there a degree of on-street car parking that we saw yesterday. That's 6 Liddell Street, so that's the sort of name of the application. So that's the sort of end house against which the sort of car park would sort of be developed. This is the access road leading in. So these are the 2 properties at the northern end of the proposed Liddell Street car park, with the commercial properties beyond. And that's the access from the Ravensworth Street junction. Just to highlight, I mean, there are no objections to this application from sort of residents, no statutory objections from consultees, a variety of recommended conditions to protect residential amenity and to ensure highway safety. But the sort of officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the various conditions that are set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. There is no questions, no public participation for speaking on this application. So, members of the committee, it's over to you if you've got any questions to ask the officers. Julie.
Thank you, Chair. The local school there, Bedlington Station Primary School, they have made some changes quite recently, and in the previous application you'll have heard my colleague Councillor Wallace refer to the fact that he and I are trying to work with Highways to make some improvements in that area. And the school's change has actually improved things to a degree, not fully, but it has made a difference. And what they've done is you can go in through the main gate, but you come out on a little side street that takes you up to Liddell's Street, which is that back lane where the car park's going to be. Now, quite a lot of children and parents are going down that back lane at school time. Now, I'm hoping it's not going to be as busy to and from that car park round the school times, but it is something we need to be conscious of for the safety of the children. Now, it did show that there was a sign so that you weren't supposed to use that back lane unless just for access. It's completely ignored. And the last slide that was up there, which showed a car parked to the left, a white car, if you look at the gable end of the house, it's got a high wall around the backyard. So as you come in there, you're looking to see if there are any cars coming down, and people are missing that sign. And the amount of vehicles that aren't supposed to go up that back lane but do is unbelievable. So first of all, I would ask if that sign could be moved towards the gable end of, I think it was at 6 Liddell Street's slide, to the gable end of that house, yeah, the one you can just see in there. And that would make a difference, make it more visible, because as you're coming around that corner, you're not seeing it. Or at least I don't believe many motorists are, because they are using it a lot. And we must think about the safety of the children there. The other thing, when we were there yesterday, it was perfect. And the same car, I believe, is actually parked in that junction now that was there yesterday. But you tend to have cars parked at the junction where you first go in, and they can quite often be on both sides, really narrowing the entrance into the junction. And for coming out, when you have cars parked on the left, you're having to go into the middle of the road to get out, which causes problems for anybody coming in. There's parked cars on the main road to the left, which severely affect your sight coming out of that junction. And the road to the right, it's not depicted quite as well on the slides, but it does actually bend a bit to the right. So you have very limited view to the right coming out as well. So my view is, with the excess of traffic now going to use that junction, if this application is approved, I think there's a higher risk of accident.
And was that your question to our highways?
And it's just basically what's going to be done to mitigate that risk, particularly to the children, but also to road users and the houses that live, well, the houses that are actually there in the residents.
Over to highways.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously we observed that yesterday on site. It is recognised. We've got conditions to look at introducing parking restrictions in that area to mitigate the concerns you have on that section of Ravensworth Street. In relation to obviously use of the back lane, you've got that existing restriction, and that sign is effectively placed within the Highways Works area that they're going to need to look at when they're bringing the footway forward. So the location of that sign will be effectively fall within the Highways Works, and it will need replacing, so we could look at getting a better sight line on that road sign if as part of those works.
So you're taking on board Judy's comments, yeah.
Just
Chris?
just very quickly. I don't like it when the answer to a problem is people do it anyway. We've got two choices at the moment: ignore it or ask the police to enforce it. So obviously that's the first thing that we need to do, which is if we want this to work well as a space, and it needs to be enforceable. Just to keep councillors updated, there is intention that moving traffic offences is something that could come to local authorities in the near future. That would include this type of sign. So again, if that was something in future, should the law change, we'll be able to manage that ourselves without having to seek police assistance.
Any more questions?
Thank you,
Martin.
Chair. Thank you. At the northern end, actually on the slide at the moment, kind of where the red car is, and then towards going away from us, if you like, from there, there's two, I think at least two commercial premises. Well, that whole area from where the red car is forward to the entrances to the commercial premises is all kind of just, it's not surfaced, it's loose surface. I see it's included in the green area on the plan. Is that whole of that area, and including right back out to the main road, is it all going to be surfaced or resurfaced as part of the plan?
The entire area that you've just described is actually not public highway. So according to the record map that we're watching now, it doesn't show up as public highway. So if it's not in the application boundary, it is. Okay. So we could look to secure that works if the applicant's willing to do it. We can certainly take it under advice.
Good. I think it would be good if it could be. Thank you. Ian.
As in the last application, we talked about charging or not charging, and there was a condition in to say that, you know, it wasn't going to be charged unless it went to cabinet, etc. I can't see a condition in this actual application to say that, so I presume that it may be in, I may have missed it, but I presume that could be added.
Chair, there's a parking management plan requirement, and charging management and other issues will be covered in that.
There is a charging
condition
condition as
17,
well.
Chair.
Condition 17 is the same condition on charging as was on the Bedlington Station application.
Good. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Ball.
Just with regards to Ravenworth, which is the main street where people will be coming in and out into that car park, what is the current speed limit on that? Just because obviously if there is cars parked down the left-hand side, we're talking about widening the pavement. I've just got a little bit of a concern if people are trying to nose out to be able to see that they're going to end up the front end of the car's being taken off, if it's still 30.
Yeah, Ravensworth Road is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm going to be careful how I go on this one because there's a point to make, which is if an access is fundamentally correct, so if that access has 2.4 metre setback, 43 metre visibility in both directions, regardless of on-street parking, it is fundamentally safe. So the increase in the use of that junction is not in its own right unsafe to do so. So you can put more, we don't increase the visibility requirements for more users, we just have the visibility for the speed limit that is in place. So we wouldn't with more use anticipate an increase in speeds and therefore think the access was no longer suitable for its purpose. But what we can do, with the condition that we have in terms of the parking strategy, and Matthew's already advises, we can look at if there is a need just to make sure that that junction is kept clear. So if we need to push back some potential indiscriminate parking to make sure that it is maintained as visible at all times, we'll be able to secure that with the works that we've already got conditioned.
That would be suitable, because obviously if we have cars parked like they are there, I think we're going to have a lot of issues. Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions? Could I have a proposal, please? Julie, I'll take you.
Thank you. Taking some reassurance that the points I've raised will be taken into account and looked at, I will happily move the recommendation for permission to be granted, because I have to say, having passed that plenty of times in the past, again, as per the previous application, I think a car park would actually improve the area and make it look nicer, more aesthetic. And we are going to need more parking space for the train station as well. So on that basis, Chair, happy to move.
Thank you very much. Is Julie's proposal seconded? Councillor Flux, yes?
Quite happy to, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to it, or? No. Okay. You might have spoke if you were at the site meeting yesterday. It was very verbal. No. Any debate, ladies and gentlemen? Alex?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just for information, there's a speed indicator unit just to the left of that photograph there, was put in by the parish. It wasn't actually, my apologies, it was paid for by Councillor Jeff Corbyn, is one of his members' improvement local schemes, only in 2020, and it was in response, if members may recall, there was a fatality in another part of Bedlington Station, so it was a joint venture along with ex-councillor Bill Crosby. So a number of speed indicator units were put into the area, because Councillor Ball's right. You do get your boy racers, but you get them in every ward. Incidentally, that road that isn't made up, it used to house over 100 HGVs for many years, belonged to Theo James. Theo James was paid by Wansbeck District Council to relocate to West Sleepburn Industrial Estate. And I'm very surprised, maybe I'm not, Wansbeck District Council didn't put that road correct. The green that you see, Chairman, then became a training unit with government money. In 1991, I was electioneering, and I went to Ravensworth Street, knocked on a chap's door and asked for his vote. He took me through his front door, walked me out the back door and said, make that a car park, you'll get me vote. I can't say I've had his vote in the last 8 elections, but maybe next time if we approve this one. Thank you, Chair.
Good for you. Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think so long as we can, if possible, improve the whole area that's within the green on my picture here, so that in front of those commercial units and surface that. I think it would be remiss not to do that when we're actually doing the whole of the car park. So as long as we can cover that via condition or whatever, then I'm happy to support this application.
Excellent, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been moved by Julie and seconded by Barry Flux. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, members of the committee. So, our final application this afternoon is again the Northumberland line. It's construction of a new single platform railway station, including new highway access and signalised junction, modifications to existing highways, including pedestrian footways, provision of parking for cars, electric vehicles, motorcycles, cycles and taxis, works to public rights of way, construction of facilities ancillary to the station, including lighting, soft and hard landscaping, surface and subsurface drainage, utilities and other services, boundary treatment and other associated works. And this is land southeast of Delaval Court, Astley Road, Seaton Delaval. And Gordon Halliday is going to speak to this application. Gordon, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. To update, you've got the substantive report, and you were circulated on the middle of last week with an addendum report. Apologies for needing the addendum report, but there were 4 conditions missed out of the substantive report, and basically the addendum report covers these 4 conditions, obviously some rewording of conditions, and also adding a couple of plans to condition number 2 to reflect these new conditions. So apologies for that. The second update is that you've all been circulated by email by Ron Billinghurst on the 29th of October and again on the 31st of October with sort of 2 further letters of representation. Mr. Billinghurst has submitted many letters of representation which are referred to in the committee report. 2 further ones came in, as I've said, on the 29th and the 31st. One enclosed a suggested revised alignment of the internal access road and made various other comments. And the second one referred to various what he considered to be emissions in the substantive report. You've sort of got I'm not going to read them out, they're both very long. You've sort of got them, they've been tabled and you've received them by sort of email. I might refer to some aspects as I go through the presentation. Again, I'll miss out the sort of generalised bits. Location of the application site. So we're talking about a completely different sort of location than we've dealt with before. Ashington, you had a town centre location. Bedlington Station, you had a town centre, smaller town, but still a town centre location. Seaton Delaval, you're talking about an edge of town location. Again, it's where the old station used to be before Beeching had his way in the 60s. But it is edge of town. It's open countryside land at the present time, undeveloped, and that's its location on the western edge of Seaton Delaval. The main elements of the Seaton Delaval proposal: only one platform required here on the east side of the railway track. Same sort of platform, 100 metres long, same sort of facilities as at Bedlington Station. Again, you've got taxi drop-off and cycle storage facilities. A car park to the east of the station with a new access taken off the A192 and providing 274 spaces, including 16 accessible spaces, 17 electrical vehicle charging bays. Again, a variety of highway and footway works to improve access. I mean, we sort of saw yesterday. It's to all intents and purposes, it is a new access adjacent to the Hastings Arms, and there are various works required at that access point that are referred to in the report in order to make that a safe access into the car park. A variety of landscaping proposals, including an area of planting to the south of the proposed car park. Part of that is landscaping, part of it is an attenuation pond related to the flood drainage scheme associated with the scheme, as the following bullet point refers to. Similar sorts of key issues, but I'll just refer to one or two of them because one or two of them are different. A small area of the proposed car park and the landscaping area at the south is in the green belt. That's assessed in your report, and you will see that sort of what we're saying on this is that this proposal, in our view, doesn't represent inappropriate development in the green belt, doesn't impact the essential purposes of defining green belt, such as openness, and our view is that that sort of this proposal doesn't conflict with green belt policy. I'll refer to the various other issues. This sort of big issue that in the objectors' minds on this scheme has been the extent of the car parking, both its size, its location, and various elements of it. But I'll sort of refer to that as we go through the sort of plans. That's the general arrangement plan with the access of the A192 off to the north east. A sort of a stretch of access road then coming down. The sort of white area to the left is actually a sort of mixture of woodland and shrub planting, and then that access road leading into the car park, and off to the right are two proposed pedestrian footpaths that would gain access into the car park. The sort of area to the west, you can see the alignment of the platform, leading from the platform back to the A192 is a public right of way, which we also walked down yesterday, and the proposal is that public right of way would sort of be maintained. Part of the alignment would actually go through the proposed new car park, but very much being seen as a subsidiary access for the station. You know, the sort of main routing of both pedestrians and vehicles is through the car park from the east. From the overbridge on the A192, that's sort of looking south. That sort of tree planting that I referred to on the left-hand side is retained for that sort of bit that you see there. Further down, it has to be removed in order to create the sort of platform. To the right of there is some properties at Delaval Court, and I've got better photographs of them later. In fact, now. So that's looking southwest rather than southeast from the same bridge, and these are the properties at Delaval Court. What's the things to note there is that they are on an elevated position, standing above the railway line. The proposals do include an acoustic fence in the same way that the proposals for Bedlington Station proposed. The same sort of height. I mean, it's an acoustic fence that sort of will mitigate some of the noise. The properties are set further back, further away from the platform, but the acoustic fence is proposed to sort of help to sort of mitigate some of the noise as a sort of extra mitigation. These are the properties that I've just been talking about, Delaval Court, and that's sort of looking the sort of platform would be located on the left-hand side of that photograph. So that sort of shrubbery would be removed. The public right-of-way you can see there, that would actually run through the far western side of the car park in that location. Obviously that sort of shrubbery is going to be removed in order to create the platform. That's sorry, it's a poor photograph because of the sun. That's the proposed access from the A192 road. The Hastings Arms is on the left-hand side. As you can see it is an existing access, but it's not an access. I mean, it's an access that leads currently to a field. It's not an access that is leading into any properties. The sort of fence line for the properties to the left at Wheat Ridge runs down the sort of left-hand side of that. I just referred to properties at Wheat Ridge. If you go down that access road to the left, there are some. There's a residential estate at Wheat Ridge. It has a line of several houses that would face onto the access road, and that's a photograph sort of from these properties, looking across the field that would be the car park, and the sort of trees in the distance, or the shrubbery in the distance, is where the sort of platform would be. This is the northern part of the site. Again, these properties at Wheat Bridge, and that's looking from the other side. So that's looking from the west. So it's looking sort of northeast at the properties at Wheat Bridge, across the sort of northern part of what would be the proposed car park, with the shrub and tree planting to the left to remain undisturbed. Further down, the public right-of-way, again, looking at the same properties at Wheat Ridge across what would be the sort of main body of the car park. This is the White Rig estate, which is south of Wheat Ridge. 4 properties there, three sort of overlooking the site, and sort of one with its gable end onto the site. These are Mr. Billinghurst lives in one of these properties, and you will have seen that there's a number of objections from 15, 16, 17 and 18 Wheat Rig. These are the 4 properties that sort of these 4 residents live in. That is looking across at what would be the southern part of the car park, and to the far right you would have areas of landscaping and the attenuation pond. That's looking that's the land between Wheat Ridge and White Rig. So that's looking from White Rig. That's where where the main pedestrian access into the car park and to the station would be, through these 2 paths that I showed you on a previous slide, leading into an access point across that sort of area of open land between the 2 estates. It's decided not to work for some odd reason. It's not going down. Right. See if I can. Right. Okay. Same as last time. A number of visualizations with the same caveats. I'll repeat them. They don't form part of the formal submissions. They're for illustrative purposes only. They're not to scale. They don't show the proposed landscaping. Notwithstanding the above, we consider that they're helpful in your understanding of the proposals. Right, so that's a plan of the proposals that it's showing the Wheat Rig estate in the south, the Wheat Ridge estate in the north. These two pedestrian areas, pedestrian access points leading into the car park. The access road from the A192 to the north, leading down into the car park, and then the sort of platform at the western side. At the southwestern side, you've got the attenuation pond that I referred to. The access, rather a different view. It's the same access point from the A193 in visualization terms. So that's a visualization of what it would look like. So you've got the Hastings Arms immediately on the left. That sort of line of properties that I referred to at Wheat Ridge, the Wheat Rig estate beyond, with the four properties that I referred to. And then you've got the sort of internal access road leading down and into the car park. Just one, and I know it's not to scale, but I would just point out that if you do look at these four properties at Wheat Rig, you sort of then look at their garden fences, and then you sort of look at the internal Hall Road that there's been submissions about realigning. It is something like a 30-metre wide gap between that fence and the fence line of the actual car park, that internal road, and that, as the report refers to, that was actually modified from the pre-application stage. On the pre-application stage, that internal road actually virtually went in a straight line and took it to the back of the houses of the gardens of Wheat Rig. So between the pre-application stage and the application stage, the applicants listened to the concerns of the residents at Wheat Rig and did a realignment of that internal access road, and requiring a sort of remodelling, restructuring of the car park. So it's wrong to say that there hasn't been any regard paid. There sort of is, a landscaping strip proposed between the houses and the car park. You can see that again in this plan. This is a plan, obviously, from the west with the two housing estates looking to the car park beyond. As I said earlier, that sort of area of sort of tree and shrub planting between the car park and the main road would be retained. It slopes up to the road, and you will have seen in the report. Again, there was representations that we should be moving the car park further to the north, your report to committee sets out various reasons why that isn't really possible, and it's to do with topography, it's to do with drainage, and actually moving it further north isn't really possible for a whole variety of reasons, as the report sets out. That's the car park, again with the two estates, this time from the southwest with the platform behind, showing the accesses from the car park into the sort of station platform. One of the problems with the suggestion from Mr. Billinghurst in terms of realigning the sort of internal road is that there would certainly be increased conflict between pedestrians and traffic if you were to run the internal road down the western side of the car park rather than the eastern side as it's currently proposed. The sort of other point I would make about Mr. Billinghurst's comments is that not all cars are going to travel all the way down the whole length of that access road. cars are going to be able to access the sort of individual bays of that car park by turning right. Cars are going to come in the access road. They aren't going to go all the way down the bottom in order to find a parking space. And logically, they will tend to use the sort of bays and strips and car parking places that are available to the north of the Wheat Rig estate, rather than going all the way down to the bottom. To take the point that the councillor made, the sort of modelling suggests that there are going to be more cars in the car park than is showing on that illustration. Another one showing, a similar sort of thing, but from a different, from the north-west rather than from the south-west. And that's it. The only thing I would apologise for is that I don't have any visualisation showing the relationship of the platform and the track to the properties at Delaval Court. Unfortunately, I didn't ask for these, and it was only too late that I sort of realised that I should have had some of these. Just to sum up, our view as officers is that the size of the car park has been justified. It's been independently assessed by County Highways. It's been done on the same sort of modelling principles as the other car parks. Different factors, obviously. Seaton Delaval's got a different catchment than Bedlington Station. That's got a different catchment than Ashington. But there are a lot of the committee report is given over to reasons why we consider that the scale of the car parking is justified, why it can't be moved into a different location. And in terms of these more recent representations that you've received over the weekend, our view is that a lot of thought has been given to the internal circulation route of that car park. It was modified in response to residents' concerns initially to provide a bigger gap between the properties and the car park, and there are lots of logistical and operational reasons for sticking with the proposed internal alignment rather than going down the alternative proposal that's been suggested by the local residents.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we're now coming up to 3 hours. Would someone like to move standing orders?
Propose that, Chairman.
Is that seconded? All in favour? Thank you. We'll continue. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we now come to our public speaking slot. We have 3 public speakers today. We've got Dennis Moy speaking in opposition to the proposal, Paul Scott, the local member, and then Peter Gillen supporting the application. So without any further ado, could I ask Dennis Moy to speak for no longer than 5 minutes, sir?
Thanks, everyone. Good evening, by the way. I represent the local residents of Whitrig Close and Delaval Court. I want to say that we are not opposed to reopening the line, nor are we against the car park. We do, however, challenge the proposed layout of the car park and its size. The changes we seek to improve, the changes that we seek will improve our lifestyle without any detriment to the car park users. This car park will have a major impact on our lives, and so we believe we are entitled to some further consideration. This current proposed layout induces antisocial behaviour, and our improvements minimise these types of problems. So I now move on to the 3 issues that I want to sort of deliver, which is car park layout, car park size, and a phased construction plan. The layout. The current outer road unnecessarily forces nearly all cars to pass close to our houses, causing a nuisance. This is completely unnecessary, especially when the outer road forms a racetrack which has long straight access road, inducing antisocial behaviour and encouraging speeding and the likes of accidents. Antisocial behaviour is already a problem. The police challenged this layout in a report submitted to the planning officer stating antisocial behaviour should be designed out at design stage. The solution: change the traffic flow. After the main entrance for direct access to the platform and route the traffic away from the back of the houses. 2 Teams meetings were held with MP Ian Levy. We all agreed NCC, Northumberland County Council, should change the direction of travel to alleviate serious issues to local residents, but NCC has not further proposed this. Changing travel direction to the platform also reduces the possibility of antisocial behaviour by breaking up the traffic flow. These changes are easy wins for NCC to carry out. Car park size. NCC has not demonstrated their design modelling analysis can withstand serious criticism. In our opinion, it hasn't. Large population areas living south of Seaton Delaval Station have been included in the catchment area when they will almost certainly use the metro system to travel south rather than using Seaton Delaval Railway Station. Senrug, a creditable organisation who's been around for many years, also confirmed this fact in a report submitted several years ago. Long-term after effects of the pandemic have been ignored. There is information available in the public domain, some as recent as last week, to say using public transport will be significantly reduced due to the changing working practices, such as working from home. The effect of the proposed car parking charges has not been taken into account. It is clear that the introduction of charges will reduce the use of Seaton Delaval Station by attracting travel to Cramlington Station and the metro system to the south. From 2019 to 2020, parking bay estimates increased by 211%, and this has never been fully explained by NCC. Phasing the construction. Because there is considerable uncertainty in the calculation of car parking bays required over the next 18 years or so, the only logical conclusion is to phase construction of the Seaton Delaval car park. Benefits of phasing: saves considerable unnecessary costs. It avoids building on green belt land. Please put your TVs on tonight when you get home. It reduces damage to the environment. Definitely put your TVs on tonight when you get home. And it reduces the impact on us local residents. And it also benefits everyone else living in the area. In the unlikely event additional car park space at Seaton Delaval is required, phasing paves the way to either extend the car park or to utilise the existing infrastructure at Seg Hill to build a cost-effective, modest-sized station in future years. And the summary of that is we oppose putting tarmac over greenbelt land and destroying biodiversity for unnecessary reasons. For 18 months, we've been lobbying NCC with suggestions to minimise impacts on all interested parties, to benefit all interested parties. The long straight access road, which then encircles the whole parking area, will have a detrimental effect on Whitwick Close residents because every vehicle will pass behind our houses with noise and pollution. This can be easily improved by reversing the flow of the traffic, by encircling the car park with parked cars, having the access road inside, by providing more car parking spaces closer to the station. The overall footprint can be reduced by reducing empty spaces between platform and parking bays, by having parking bays parallel to the platform circling the car park, and by considering a different drainage method. Swales are expensive and need frequent maintenance to avoid further flooding.
Thank you very much, sir.
I got through that just.
Well done. Could I now invite Paul Scott to make his comments? Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm the local councillor for Seg Hill with Seaton Delaval. Firstly, I fully support this application, given that it will bring passenger rail services back to Seaton Delaval and Seaton Valley for the first time since 1964. Once constructed, there will be a service in and out of Newcastle of less than 20 minutes, and also a connection onto the metro in even less time than that. The benefits for Seaton Delaval and Seaton Valley are therefore very clear, and I recommend to members this evening that you approve the application. However, as we've already experienced with the Bedlington application, there are, with all major projects, there are valid concerns that need to be addressed, and in this case, it relates to the proposal for the car park. The details of the concerns have already been provided by Mr. Moy, so I won't go back into them. But I would, though, stress that the concerns are from a group of residents who support a station in Seaton Delaval, but believe the car park should be looked at again. I agree with this position and suggest that if members approve the application, that a reserved matter condition is added that is linked to the car park. This will allow more work to be done before a final scheme is agreed, and that would include issues such as the access road running through the middle of the car park, which would remove the access road from behind the houses, but also from it running close to the station platform itself. Thank you very much.
Peter Gillen to say his piece in support of the application. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Chair and members. I am Peter Gillen, planning consultant for the proposed station at Seaton Delville. The station is one of 6 new stations proposed as part of plans to reintroduce passenger services between Newcastle and Ashington. It is envisaged that there will be a half-hourly service with an anticipated journey time between Newcastle and Ashington of 35 minutes. The application before you has been the subject of extensive consultations with officers and other stakeholders, both before and after the planning submission. The proposals have also been the subject of a significant public consultation exercise, whereupon several hundred people wrote to support the overall Northumberland line scheme, with over 139 respondents specifically supporting the proposals at Seaton Delville. Such support confirms there is a significant public interest in the development of a new railway station at Seaton Delville. Following consultation in December 2020, changes to the scheme were made to respond to those concerns raised by residents. These included increasing the area of planting and screening between residential properties and the proposed access road, realigning the access road to minimise the straight sections of road to address the concerns this could encourage speeding, and realigning the pedestrian access to the east away from the property boundary. We've continued to work with your officers and other stakeholders to address concerns wherever possible during the determination of the application, culminating in the scheme before you. The application presented before you and the submitted documents provide a robust case which demonstrates the application is in accordance with all relevant national and local planning policies. The proposed railway station will deliver significant economic, social and environmental benefits, precise details of which can be found within the planning application submission. The submitted transport assessment and the passenger demand modelling which underpins that assessment has informed the design of the scheme and is supported by your highways officers as detailed in the Officers Committee report. The station and wider scheme will deliver the transport infrastructure which is required to attract inward investment, create additional employment opportunities, enhance economic vitality and encourage further economic growth in Seaton Delville and South East Northumberland more widely. The station will facilitate increased access to employment and training opportunities for residents. Policies within both the adopted Blythe Valley Local Plan and Core Strategy and the emerging Northumberland Local Plan identify Seaton Delville as a safeguarded location for a future railway station. The station is a sustainable development which both national and local planning policies confirm should be supported. As stated in the officer's report, there are no objections to the application from statutory consultees. When balancing the objections made to the application against the significant economic, social and environmental benefits of the scheme, we believe the application ought to be approved. The application has been thoroughly assessed by planning, highways, drainage and other local authority officers and is found to be in accordance with the relevant planning policies. Officers consider the application ought to be granted permission, subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report. We would respectfully urge members to accept the planning officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now questions to our planning officers. Barry Flux.
Yeah. In relation to Councillor Scott's view on a condition, is that something that's possible, or would that totally kibosh the whole scheme?
Can I ask the Director of Planning for his view on that?
There's a condition on about the management of the car park, and Gordon attempted to set out some of the logic behind the layout that has been proposed within the application. There are some physical issues to do with the design and the function of the car park, which would weigh against changing the circulation within it. For example, to avoid cars passing in significant numbers between where people were parking and walking to use the station from a safety perspective. There can be some fine-tuning of the car park and the car park management plan condition that allows for that. However, what we couldn't do at this stage without deferring the full application will be to alter the actual physical layout of the car park itself if that went beyond the red line boundary of the area, so that would require a fresh application. There are a number of conditions on here, and I would advise members to see them. When you read a planning committee report, you have to read the analysis and all the conditions together. And there are elements within there on issues like landscaping and screening, and requiring a detailed landscaping scheme, which I think could actually address via another route the concerns raised by both the public speaker and the local member. Members are perfectly entitled, however, though, to suggest that we have a condition requiring final submission of the car parking layout, by a condition. But I do not think there's actually a significant opportunity to fundamentally alter the layout of the car park. But members can ask for that to be looked at, and it can be double checked if required. But I'd ask, could I ask Matt or Chris to come in on this one?
I'll come in on it because I think you stole something I was going to say earlier, Rob, so I'll repeat what you said, which is there might be a million different ways to design this car park, but there will be balance on that. There are other consultees that have input, ecology, the noise issues, the light issues. And if we start looking at rejigging a layout, I might see one that I prefer as the highways consultee, but Gordon will have to go back to the other consultees and strike balance and be satisfied that he has the best layout in front of him. And a lot of work has been done to this point in time to satisfy that position. So I'm not against the proposal, but I do think that we have gone through that, and Gordon has come up with what he thinks is the best balanced planning solution based on our input, but also the input of other consultees that I'm not privy to.
Yeah. Chair, can I just jump up for a moment and point a few features out, just a lot to draw your attention to as a committee? As Gordon mentioned, that in terms of the pre-application process and how the design has evolved, the access route here has been realigned slightly to take it further away from the houses. Okay. What I think will do the same job in terms of minimising the impact on those houses. Could you speak up a little Sorry. Bit? Yeah, sorry.
You're going to have to put a mic on.
Yeah, I'll put a microphone. Yeah, what I was saying was the layout has been the product of a continual evolution during the pre-application and application process here. And as Gordon pointed out, there's been a slight realignment of the road to take it further away from some of the properties. What I think could address the issues that people are concerned about is that there is a substantial landscaping strip in the scheme. There's a condition on already, which is a standard condition about a landscaping scheme to be submitted and approved in writing. And what that normally does is look at the species mix that will be used in the landscaping strip. And there are many default approaches you use to landscaping. Okay, you use species which are local to the area and have a good mixture of screening and ecological benefits. What can be done on this scheme, and it may require a slight amendment to the condition, however, I think it could be coped with under the as worded, is that when we look at the screen planting, the planting here, we can look at the angles between any openings, windows in any of these properties, and at what point they then align with the road surface and make sure that perhaps a higher than normal landscaping strip is used to fill in the gaps of the existing planting and to provide something which will screen the properties from the highway. If you actually look, though, there is actually a reasonable distance from the internal road to the buildings, and I'll suggest that some of the impacts that has been discussed could be mitigated through a taller than normal approach to structural landscaping here. And again, that can be tackled via the condition. The issue of fundamentally altering the circulation round is remember that you want people to drive in, park their cars and then walk to the railway station. What you do not want to see, ideally, is people driving in front of the car parking and then walking back across where vehicles in numbers will be passing. So, as Chris says, there's lots of things to be balanced up on this, and this solution is felt to be the optimum one. However, I would suggest to members that the concern, just to recap, could be addressed by a beefing up of the landscaping strip along here with the view of screening rather than just to say ecological value in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now
Jim, can I just add something? It's also worth remembering that area between the Whiterigg estate and the car park is within the application boundary, and it is land that is going to be acquired from the Hastings estate as part of the scheme. You know, so what Rob has referred to is completely within you know, the sort of control of the applicants to do.
Thank you. So I've got questions from Councillor Ball and Councillor Hill. Councillor Ball.
Right, I've got a couple of questions for you. The first one is with regards to the A road, where people will be coming in and going back out of. Is there any restrictions on, is it turn left only when you come out? Is it, again, when you come the other way, is there going to be any modifications to that road? Because if somebody's looking to turn right from the left-hand side of that picture, you might end up with cars back right the way up to the roundabout the other side. And when people are coming out of the car park, if they're looking to turn right, they might end up being sat there for hours at like busy periods. So that's my first question. And the other question, with the sections in the middle of the car park here, are they actually part of the design, or they're for visual impact only? Just because my concern is with regards, we do have issues in other car parks across the county where people do meet in large numbers in cars. Will this stop things like drifting and stuff in the car parks, and just after the trains have stopped running, will there be anything to limit people going in and out?
Yeah. Chair, if I could first hand over to our highways colleagues, because the issue you raised about the turning into the car park has been the subject of some extensive dialogue. Can pass over to Chris or
I'll take that
Matthew.
one. Yeah, so what's not shown on the visuals is that that's actually going to be traffic light controlled. It's proposed as a traffic light control junction, so all movements are possible. Pedestrian, cyclist crossings are catered for, and it's been subject to, as Rob said, extensive modelling to demonstrate that solution will provide both capacity and safety improvements. It's also been subject to a stage 1 road safety audit as well, where some minor amendments have been made in relation to its proximity to the car park for the Hastings pub as well. So in terms of that point, it's not shown.
Can I ask Gordon to come in on the?
Yeah, I mean, what's been proposed is some modest landscaping, sort of suds areas within the car park. Now, it serves a couple of purposes. One purpose is to break it up in visual terms, you know, so that it's not just a complete expanse of tarmac. And the second thing is that it would perform a drainage function as part of the sustainable urban drainage scheme. What has been made clear by anybody that is likely to be maintaining it, for example, you know, if the county council if it was going to be a county council car park, they would definitely not wish it to be shrubs that would contain, you know, that would collect litter or that people could hide behind or anything like that. So it is likely to be very, very low level, but it is likely to sort of have this combined effect of visually and drainage-wise breaking up the car park.
Thank you. Councillor Hill?
Thank you. I was reminded in some of the opening remarks of a conversation I've recently had with Rob about when residents feel very passionate and repetitive when they're complaining about something. I think there's a danger we can get a bit defensive when it doesn't defeat the fact that often they have very good points. That's just a wider side point, obviously, but I mean, this is a great development, and I think there'll be people across the country that would envy, you know, railway lines and stations reopened. I would like, obviously, to see even further north up the country. In my patch, this happening. We're looking more to Scotland to have this sort of thing, to the connection to Edinburgh. But the point about the key issues around the car park, the size and the layout. One of the speakers mentioned, and it's here in the list of the objections, that the modelling for the number of car parking spaces use out-of-date data since which COVID has changed the situation. Now, I think this is a really good point. Obviously, we don't consult with social historians or behaviour experts or people who you would have particular insight in this, but it's a pretty obvious to me that COVID has brought forward a change that was happening anyway, and it is clear to me and others, the speaker, that there is going to be less commuting. That is clearly, and I know there's some people resisting that, they're in denial, people let out office space and all the rest, but that's just the way the world's moving. So is it the case, and I know it's a difficult one, but is it the case that that is true, that the modelling isn't taking account of the changing landscape?
Chair, can I answer this one?
Yes.
And I think you've articulated that extremely well, as did the public speaker, say as well this concern. Okay. Train stations are an unusual case. Okay. Normally, we're in a situation where we've moved away from the old idea of planning, arguing for the minimum amount possible versus the maximum amount possible of car parking. In other words, in the past, we used to argue for as much car parking as possible to avoid parking problems on nearby areas. But in the latter years, we've been with an issue for most forms of development. We try and reduce the amount of car parking to that minimum necessary, because, like some examples you've heard about at schools, where if you have lots of on-site car parking, it induces people to use their cars, which is going against the arguments for pushing for modal shift to more sustainable modes of transport. However, a railway station is a very different beast, is that it would be a sustainable outcome if lots more shorter trips were made by car to a railway station rather than longer trips into Newcastle for either work or socialising reasons, okay? And because of that, there will be an active strategy of the promotion of the use of the railway, including by using cars over shorter trips. So it is not the normal modelling approach you would use to say, actually, you know, what's the least car park you can get away with? In other words, here we're looking at what car parking we require to achieve those strategic objectives of actually maximising the use of the railway. So I can understand that the catchment area that you look at may not appear to be intuitively obvious, because as I said, there will be an active process of the promotion of the use of the car park, which is different to normal car parks where we seek to minimise it, okay? So with that in mind, then you have to look at time as well. And while there will be certainly a change in the way that society functions, I think, post-COVID, and the role of the city centres could well change, we're also, I think there's inescapable logic that when you look at where park and ride schemes or branch lines have been reopened in the new stations, you get not an immediate full take-up to full capacity, but you get a ramping up over a period of a number of years where from the early period of opening, where the car park could well be underused, but actually within a relatively short period, you can see problems where the car parks generally aren't large enough. And then you have to look at, okay, what are the risks of pulling back the car park size? And this is a finely balanced debate. And there's the issue of putting off people using the train station, or if a car park isn't big enough, you have the issue of car parking being displaced to nearby residential roads. So there's lots of issues to think about here, and we've looked at this at length within the planning department, and we've pushed back against the applicant to provide more information on this. And the position we are with now is that we have no reason to consider that the car park is too large, okay? Because of the issues that it is not the normal considerations of trying to maximise modal shift, in other words, walking and cycling, because here we're trying to get people to use the, I'll come back to it, here the car park is seen as an asset to promote the use of the railway line. I know that is, and that puts it differently to normal car parking. So there's a balance here. Yeah, the only thing I suppose that could be done, and the applicant would need to be fully involved in this, is that the suggestion made by the local councillor is that potentially, if this follows the normal pattern for train station car park use, where we saw a number of years of an uptake period, there could be, through the car parking management plan, the issue that say, right, I think there are strong opportunity costs for not building it all in one go, but maybe, say, the last two strips going down the bays could be cordoned off or something to reduce the overall capacity in the short term. I say by putting some mobile planters in there or something like that. But that wouldn't really, though, alter. I mean, that would reduce the capacity in the short term, but that wouldn't really alter the fact that vehicles have to access the point via the access, so they will be going past at least some of the houses under any scenario. Okay. We are keen, finally, on using car park management plans, and it's something we haven't used historically, more effectively to cover both issues like antisocial behaviour, car parking capacity, the issue of charging, the overall management of it. So there's I think there's the ability there to build in some provisions. However, to take us around to the beginning of the process, for the reason that we are actively trying to promote the use of the railway station, that having a car park of an appropriate size is a valuable plank of that strategy. Okay, I know this is not what we'll be arguing normally in terms of over-provision of car parking. Because clearly, if you're talking about a supermarket within a town, you'd be trying to cut their car parking to the minimum because you'd be encouraging people to walk or cycle to it. Here, it's a different scenario. Okay. I apologise for the length of that response.
No, Rob, I think it's also relevant to just to remember that the modelling anticipated a worst case scenario of 361 spaces. So I mean, what's been proposed is 274. So that there's been a balancing exercise. That there has been regard been had to the sort of other implications of sort of putting in a particular number, and that sort of balancing exercise has come out with 274 as being the appropriate size that highways support in sort of not displacing people into neighbouring estates. So it's not that we are it's not that the applicants are catering for the maximum in the modelling. It's 77 spaces below the maximum.
Martin, question?
Yes, well, two questions. First one is with regard to the pedestrian, the Y-shaped pedestrian access from the two estates. I'm not sure because it's difficult to tell from my map, but if I was coming from the kind of school direction in Seaton Delaval and I was wanting to cycle to the railway station, I would be trying to avoid the A192. I don't know if it's possible to actually filter through the estates, but if I could, would the two pedestrian routes be suitable to cycle to the station to avoid the main road?
I'll just pick these up quickly, Chair. Just to answer Councillor Hill's question, the industry has been reporting between July and September of this year, we are back to pre-pandemic levels of traffic. We are at 101%, 104% of the baseline, which is February 2020, just before we entered lockdown. So we are seeing the same levels of traffic in urban centres, in other locations. It's not 100% nationally, but it is. We are generally seeing pre-pandemic levels of traffic again. That's being reported. Okay. Sorry.
That's going to be the medium long-term trend. Obviously, people are back in offices now,
Yeah.
so it would go up, but
yeah,
we can place a bet on it. But I'm sure the trend's going to be down.
I don't want to expand on the point too much because others have done it, but there were one or two things that were going to happen in lockdown. We were either going to break the elastic band and see behavioural change, or we were going to go back to the way that we were behaving previously. And currently we're seeing the trend of people going back into the car as opposed to walking, cycling, doing all the things they were doing in lockdown, because many businesses still haven't fixed their decisions about working, etc., so on and so forth. It's very all over the place, but in certain places we're seeing pretty, we've got the reports there. It's the RAC Foundation. It's not like it's a made-up entity. It's the ones that report on the roads for us. So just trying to give you that image that whilst residents are concerned that the modelling work which has been done is based on pre-pandemic levels, it's a case of we're back to pre-pandemic behaviour. So you couldn't say that there isn't enough parking because the work's been done on the basis of 100% and we're seeing 100% again.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the question about cycling?
Yeah, well, for those that know the local area, those roads are actually quite good because they're quiet and you can go down there and you could cycle and get to the station through them. We've also had some engagement with the local councillor who's sought to crisscross that green a bit more as well, actually, to see if we can get a bit more interrelationship between those two estates and the local. So we are building a general position there, but certainly people will be able to cycle down there anyway, Martin. It's fine. Yeah.
And the second question was going back to the capacity of the car park, really. Is it the design is out to 2039, which is 18 years' time. Irrespective of what has been said about traffic levels going back up, I can see from my local station that the car park for the station, which was rammed before COVID, is still not anywhere near up to the capacity that it was. So things have changed. Obviously, we're not at the end of it yet, but things have changed. And we don't know, honestly, what it will look like by 2039, or even perhaps 5 years' time. So my question is really, is it in the art of the possible to look at phasing the size of the car park? Because that would obviously save us building into that greenbelt section, which obviously we have been keen to protect. I'm not sure about the cost savings because it might cost more to build car parks in two phases anyway. But if it turned out that more people decide to go by electric bike in 5 years, 10 years' time, would we have built a lump of car park which was never going to be parked on?
Chair, can I just come in very quickly just to answer this in a slightly different way? We have to go on what we know now, okay, and the modelling work that's been done. And what we know now is, as Gordon says, is that the car park has already been reduced over the maximum predicted vehicle use. And I'll keep coming back to the point that we are not looking at a facility here that will be used completely free of any other intervention. There will be an aggressive policy of promoting the use of the car park, and that will be a strategic objective. And when we're looking at the wider work on what we're calling the Northumberland Line Economic Growth Corridor, where there could be more jobs and more homes in that corridor, and that's a piece of work that will be done strategically, that will be to drive up the benefit from having a railway line. And from that, you could, I think, equate that what we know at the moment is that there will be, not just a transport-based priority on maximising its use, but an economic regen emphasis on maximising the use of the new railway stations. So on that basis, given that it is already currently under providing compared with the predictions, I think that it's a safe forecast size to be used. So we do have the car park management plan in place, which can adjust things as we go along. I think from an evidential perspective, we'd have to have strong evidence in terms of future gazing that the car park wouldn't be required to make any other decision apart from the one recommended today, because it's as evidence as we can do it today without using what ifs. Thanks.
Questions? Malcolm.
Sorry, Chair, you look really downhearted.
No, I'm not. I'm delighted you're asking questions, sir. Come on.
I know Richard is.
Let's hear everything.
Quick questions. Do all trains stop at all stations?
Yes, that's
Thank you.
the proposal.
Thank you. No buildings on this one? No proposal for a station building or anything?
Sorry, I missed that.
There's no proposal for a station building on this one or anything?
Well, there's no proposals for buildings on any of the stations. There are proposals for wet weather shelters, but none of the stations are there. You know, there's on none of the stations are there proposals for buildings.
Yeah, right. So that's a no. The last question then is, where does the drainage water go? Because I was going to ask you what these bioretention suds were in the car park, but I think you've answered that. So where does the main drainage water go? Because the town council have mentioned that it's a natural flood basin, and looking at the topography, I can see that.
Yeah, it drains to a water course to the south of the site. So there's a it's in the report under the section on drainage that you know there's been a drainage system devised. It's been assessed by the local lead flood authority, and so they're satisfied, and it drains to the south to a water course to the south of the site.
Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Can I propose the officer's recommendation, please?
Well, if there are no
With
more
conditions.
questions, you can. No more questions?
If there are no more questions.
Have you got a proposal?
As I said, I propose the officer's recommendation with relevant conditions.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Seconded. Any debate on this proposal? I think we've probably covered most of the points in the questioning.
Yeah, Chair, I just think that it's in seconding that. I've listened to the whole lot of what's been said, and I understand that reluctantly there's very little you can do in terms of that car park becoming smaller, but perhaps there is stuff that can be done on the type of planting that you have there, whether it's evergreen, how it's managed, all that kind of stuff, which I'm not an expert on, but others will be experts on. It might not be exactly what the residents want. However, I do hope it will go some way to allay their concerns, and that proactively everyone can work together to make that as mitigated in the best possible way we can.
Yeah.
Regardless of what's happening with work, there's still going to be people travelling to Newcastle to go to the theatre, go to the match, all this, that and the other. And what we can do to encourage people to do that rather than driving into the centre of Newcastle, we should do. So with that, that's why I'm seconding Councillor Hutchinson's proposal.
Well, as the Chair, I'm right with you on that one. And, you know, I would just like to say, Ron Billinghurst's email, the points he raised, you know, although he's, you know, a little bit disparaging about our plan department, his issues have all been covered, you know, and we've looked at them, we've put them upside down, and we've scrutinised to find, you know, another way out. But as Rob and Gordon have said, you know, the main thrust of the car park design is to keep car and customer interface to a minimum, and I think it does that by having the road furthest away from the railway station. But yes, You know, like you, Barry, I feel we've got that buffer zone. We've got to try and protect the houses up there and make sure that, you know, we do our best to lessen any disturbance that they might have from cars
Chair,
coming in.
can I just, having listened to the committee's concern, can I suggest that, as per one of the earlier items, that given its importance, that the landscaping and the car park management plan conditions be discussed with you as chair, so that you are comfortable that the final schemes do reflect the concerns of members.
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be
thanks.
excellent. Thank you. As proposer, could I agree with that? Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'm not like Malcolm, I will speak very quickly. Heard what the local member said and the resident there, and what Rob mentioned there before about possibly having an overflow type of area, barrier, is this included? You know, next to the houses? Will that just be barriered in some way?
Well, I think that'll come up in the transport management.
That will be included in that.
The actual management of the car park over time will be covered in the car park management strategy, and we can look at that issue.
I heard you mention that, I'm just
And
reiterating.
having heard the concerns of the committee, that Gordon and I can make sure that this issue is looked at, and then I will talk it through with the chair. Okay, thanks.
And the landscaping scheme would be the condition 12 talks about within 1 month of start on site, a detailed landscaping scheme shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The sort of gist of the committee's concerns there is that we would be looking in particular at the areas between the housing and the site and the access road. You know, so I don't think it needs additional wording. It's as Rob said, it just needs additional scrutiny at the discharge of condition stage.
Right. Good. Thank you, officers. Thank you, members. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
I think just in case
Sorry.
Councillor Hutchinson wants to...
Do you want to
I would love to. I've sat here all night. It'll be very quick, you know, about 10 minutes, something like that. I'm pleased I went on a site visit to see it all. It was very enlightening, that one. And the officers must have worked hard on this, really, because there's been a lot of inside work done to alter the car park slightly to try and appease the residents. It's as good as it's going to get, I would imagine. I can't think it'll get any better. I just hope it's all been appreciated. And agriculturally, when a farmer builds a shed, he always builds one too small. So this is the time to build a bigger shed, I think. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Hutchinson's recommendation? It's not for a shed at all. It's a railway station and a car park.
Unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous. Well done, committee. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we've got nothing else on the agenda today apart from an appeals update and a Section 106 agreements update report. There for information. And we've got no urgent business. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and well done. Indeed.